Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, November 6, 2017. My name is Michael Brooks, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially-ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, Alyssa Battistoni on thriving, not surviving, climate change, the environment, and our democratic socialist future. I'll be talking with her about the right way to respond to Trump's assault on the environment. BBC reporting on Paradise Papers, tax havens, the secrets of the ultra-rich. A consortium of more than 90 news organizations has revealed that, shockingly, the globe's plutocrats don't pay their share of taxes. Who'da thunk it?
Not fair.
Not fair. Ed Gillespie running a mini-Trump, ultra-bigoted, xenophobic race for Virginia's gubernatorial race as people head to the polls tomorrow there and in New Jersey and in New York City. Will that model further entrench nativism and xenophobia in the GOP? Rand Paul got beat up by his neighbor. Very weird story. Saudi king is making moves on rival factions of the royal family under the guise of fighting corruption. And a very questionable helicopter accident takes out one of the Saudi royals. Trump in Japan essentially siding with Japanese ultra-far-right nationalists to restart Japanese military. And the way they should, of course, restart it is by buying weapons from us. And Trump wins about 70 visas to bring foreign workers as maids into Mar-a-Lago. And apparently, Robert Mueller might have enough intelligence, enough information to press charges against both Mike Flynn and Dad Mike Flynn Jr. as the perp walks hopefully continue as the OG Robert Mueller circles in on the Habsburg family meets Colombo. Habsburg dynasty meets Colombo family. The Trump administration. All that and more on today's Majority Report. Of course, there was this atrocity in Texas yesterday. As it stands now, 26 people were dead in a mass shooting at a mega church, at a church in rural Texas. The gunman is also dead. The victim's age ranges from 5 to 72. I had actually just read that the youngest might have been 18 months, according to updated information that I've seen. Obviously, this is, of course, not the time to talk about policy. It's a time to kind of sort of offer, prayers and then vague, random demonization of people who struggle with mental health issues. But as I always say, the way to frame this issue is that there is a domestic arms cartel in this country. There's an interest group that represents them. They have absolutely no regard, care, or concern for public safety or lives of any form. They're an incredibly dangerous, absolutely lives-discarding business. They're bagmen in the GOP. are going to do whatever they want in Congress no matter what, because they're an own subsidiary of this dangerous cartel and the NRA that represents them. And this might essentially just boil down to, this is going to need to be direct consumer action and mass public shame of anybody who profits from these industries. It's disgusting. This tragedy will make no difference from a policy standpoint, and obviously will make no difference in the conscience of any of the people that work in this industry. And that's really, I mean, we're going to play some more sound on this later, because obviously there was any number of insane and disgusting comments that were made about this. But, you know, that's the basic summary. There's an arms cartel, holds the country hostage. It has a frontline propaganda organization, the NRA, which is incredibly adroit at exploiting the racial paranoias, the fears, the xenophobia, the whole conspiracy lizard brain of Trump and Alex Jones and all the rest. And then there's the Republican Party, who both because of campaign contributions and a certain part of their voting base and a kind of national propaganda network are never going to do anything about it. So we got to focus on holding these companies directly accountable and mass public shaming their leadership, because they're all complicit. Let me actually, before we do that, do have some ads we have to get to. Well, no, you know what? We should have a palate cleanser before we do that. Donald Trump is in Japan, and they're laughing at us. They're literally laughing. Donald Trump is such an embarrassment that even people like me that don't place a whole lot of stock in, like, how are we being perceived overseas? Because the reality is that if we're engaging in awful policies overseas, there's only sort of so much that it can matter the sort of personal style of the president. But the fact that this guy is an incredible bloviating jackass, on top of increasing civilian casualties in a place like Afghanistan, does not help. These are images of Donald Trump with Shinzo Abe. We have the burger photo first. This is after they played golf. They're in Japan. And, of course, Donald Trump in Japan needs a Coke and a burger because he's an overgrown child with a mush brain.
Are you sure you don't want to eat with chopsticks, Shinzo?
Yeah, Shinzo, you want chopsticks? Chinky, 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 rice. But I'll have a burger. And then they have the him and Abe both have now the make alliances even greater signed hats. And Abe kind of has this sort of like, oh, God, this guy's a moron. North Korea might literally actually do something to my country. And this idiot is the one that I have to work with to figure this crisis out. So there is Trump in Asia, where he can tweet threats to murder millions of people in the Korean Peninsula and pick a fight with Steph Curry.
Very presidential. Very
presidential. It is, in fact, totally embarrassing. Blue Apron is #1 in fresh ingredients and recipe delivery service in the country. Blue Apron's mission is to make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone. Blue Apron achieves this by supporting a more sustainable food system, setting the highest standards for ingredients, and building a community of home chefs. Check out some of these featured upcoming meals. Crispy wild Alaskan pollock and garlic mashed potatoes with roasted broccoli and tartar sauce. Cheesy broccoli baked pasta with crispy thyme breadcrumbs. Seared steaks and garlic butter with oven fries and romaine salad. Roasted chicken and fall vegetable with cranberry and ginger compote. I have had a lot of Blue Apron meals, and I'm going to need to, I think I'm going to be moving soon. I'm going to have to set up, I'm going to have to get a Blue Apron membership. Every meal I've had with Blue Apron is unbelievably tasty and insanely easy to put together. Check out this week's menu and get 30 off of your first order with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/majority. You'll love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron. So don't wait. That's blueapron.com/majority. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. And as everybody knows from Sam's kvetching, I've had to do a lot of traveling over the last month. And sometimes the book, like if I'm doing a work thing, you know, you're lucky and the flights and everything are booked and planned for you. But as you know, if you have to plan any sort of trip, it can be incredibly complicated to figure out. And did you know that the average family visits 5 websites before booking a vacation rental? Just think of the amount of time and agita that creates. You can spend less time planning your next trip and more time relaxing with tripping.com, the world's #1 site for vacation rentals. Whether you're looking for a cabin or a getaway for New Year's Eve, planning your next beach vacation in Hawaii, or that vacation in Europe where you'll live like a local, Trip.com can help you find the perfect place to stay. Vacation rentals offer flexibility, perks, and amenities that hotels don't, like multiple bedrooms, backyards, hot tubs, free Wi-Fi, and even a fully stocked kitchens. So you have a quick bite on the go or a plan to cook your own meals. Great for families and large groups. This sounds incredibly fun, actually. We should use tripping to do like some type of Majority Report TMBS getaway to like Barbados or something. I'm sure we're all going to want to do that in February. Tripping.com, one search lets you filter and compare and sort out over 10 million available properties on trusted sites like VRBO, TripAdvisor, Booking.com, and more. Don't wonder if you're getting the best deal. You'll save an average of 18% per night by booking your vacation with Tripping.com. So don't forget, if you want to save money while booking the perfect vacation rental for your next trip, head to tripping.com/majority. That's TRIPPING.com/majority. Tripping.com/majority. And this is also very exciting. Our old friends Movement are back. I'm going to need to... Movement might lure me back into the watch game. I've seen Sam got his wife a watch. It's incredibly dope looking. The holiday shopping season is here. With Movement, you can skip the crowds and standing in crazy lines and find a gift that they'll love at prices that beat department stores. Movement watches start at just $95. At a department store, you're looking at $400 to $500. Movement figured out that by selling online, they are able to cut out the middleman and retail markup, providing the best possible price. At such great prices, Movement watches make wonderful holiday gifts too. Classic design, quality construction, and styled minimalism. Over 1 million watches sold in over 160 countries. Get 15% off today with free shipping and free returns by going to movement.com/majority. That's MVMT.com/majority. This watch has a really clean design that makes a great fashion statement. Now is the time to step up your watch game. Go to MVMT.com/majority. Join the movement. All right, everybody. We are going to take a brief break. We will be back with Alyssa Battistoni, and we're going to be talking about climate and socialism.
So when I burn them evil concept, go and say that is a destruction to the humanity. So when I say, let up know. When I watch it now, hey, check this, check. Jaja City, Jaja Town, them want to turn it in a cowboy town. When I look and know, Jaja City, Jaja Town, them want to turn it in a dead man town. Them think them reach the ultimate, yo, but them no reach nowhere yet. Them get caught in the internet of society. I tell me them my intellect, them promote too much debt. When I look and know, Jaja City, Jaja Town, them a turn it in a bad man town. When I look and know, Jaja City, Jaja Town, them want to turn it in a cowboy town. Want to scab you, sir. Love is the only solution. Can stop a revolution. Just freedom, meditation from war and illusion. Love is the only solution that can stop a revolution. Just freedom, meditation from war and illusion. But Molly rise and gone on them think we done. Tosh rise and gone on them think we did done. Jacobin rise and gone them think we did done.
and it silk him rise and gone. But look ya, Morgan family come rise. And many rise to our uprising, Sizzler rise. And many rise to his uprising, Luciano rise. And many rise to his uprising, Rastafari call we so we come. Mali children rise. And many rise to their uprising, Capleton rise. And David Oshu is uprising, would you rise? And many rise to his uprising.
Welcome back to the Majority Report. Michael Brooks here. Joining us now is Alyssa Battistoni. She is on the editorial board of Jacobin magazine. She's a PhD candidate in political science at Yale University, and she's the author of the recent piece, Living, Not Just Surviving. Working class movements must place social and ecological reproduction at their heart of their vision for the future. Alyssa, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, Alyssa, I want to kind of start by, you talked about Donald Trump's pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord, which he did over the summer. And, this sparked a lot of outrage and a lot of concern. I think, for some pretty obvious reasons, because, we were already sort of at a point where even the kind of mainstream ways of addressing this crisis were really insufficient, and he was sort of committed to sort of accelerating, not dealing with the issue, sort of in the opposite direction, putting us into kind of full reverse gear. But you kind of made the point that while this was disastrous, some of the kind of hyperventilating about it missed the fact that, the Paris Accord, of course, in and of itself was simply not sufficient for where we need to go, and that the kind of technocratic models weren't working either. Can you kind of set that up for us?
Sure. So I think, as you say, there was a lot of concern about Trump's decision to withdraw from Paris, and, that this was a sign that, it was just another sort of one of the catastrophic decisions that Trump was going to make that was going to mean that there was no hope of addressing climate change and so on. And I think, while it's not a good sign, I think it was, the response was overblown in terms of how much our commitment to the Paris Accord was actually going to be addressing climate change on the scale necessary, which many people had pointed out even at the time that, it's good that there's finally an agreement, but it was not nearly sufficient for actually taking action in the ways we would need to prevent catastrophic climate change. But then I think also it just demonstrated the limits of trying to negotiate deals of what I think the Obama administration's approach was, which was to either work through domestic policy, but in a way that could either work through the federal bureaucracy or through executive orders, or through elite international negotiations like the various COP meetings, another one of which is actually starting today in Bonn. But so, you can do some work through these kinds of more technocratic solutions that don't require a mass movement. But I think that they hit their limits when you haven't actually done the work to build political support for a climate program, and when it becomes, an easy target for someone like Trump, who, I think actually what Trump did was just, I think in the same way that a lot of liberals were quick to say, oh, look at all the action Obama's taking on climate, and pointing to these, whether the Paris Accord or the Clean Power Plan, or things that, were a step in the right direction, but not really action on the scale we'd need. Trump did the opposite, which is say, look, Obama is killing coal. Obama is killing your jobs, to people where, the decline of not only fossil fuel industry, but, industry in general has been really catastrophic, and which actually Obama was not as responsible for.
Let's get to that in just a minute, because I want you to elaborate on that, and that kind of opens up the door of addressing the conflict, the false conflict, but nonetheless the kind of the notion that there's a conflict between workers' rights and progress and a radical environmental agenda. which I think is at the heart of, your argument in a lot of ways. But before we get there, can you just explain briefly why Paris was scientifically, insufficient? This is not just like a political claim you're making. It was not sort of in accordance with where the overwhelming body of science says we need to go. And then maybe to elaborate a bit more on those two-tier Obama tracks and how that reflects kind of what's still put on the table by, like a Macron or a Trudeau, this sort of top-down technocratic version.
Yeah, so the agreements that different countries, or the commitments that different countries had made in the Paris Accord in terms of their carbon reduction plans and commitments, added up, fell short of what scientists have agreed would be necessary to avoid 2 degrees Celsius of warming, which is, generally the baseline that people say is really like the danger mark for really the more catastrophic types of warming. I think some people think that 2 degrees is too high, but the commitments that countries had made were in themselves not actually enough to reach that goal. To start off, so that was, I think even on the face of it, people agreed that it was not going to get us all the way there. And then, it was going to require at any point to actually implement, I think, the set of commitments, because countries tend to fall short of their commitments. In practice, it always requires, I think, a lot of would have required action on the ground to actually put in place. But even the commitments themselves, which were non-binding, would be more than we're just not didn't add up to what scientists generally agree is would keep us within a safe amount of warming.
And then so then we have Trump coming along and exploiting this division. And it's very paradoxical because on one hand, and again, I don't want to draw a false equivalency here. There's no doubt that a top-down liberal technocratic approach, of which is absolutely not my politics nor your politics, but it's certainly preferable to a acceleration and an outright denial of reality and exploitation of the issue, which is obviously what Trump has been doing, right? So that's clear. And there's also a whole set of really exploitative industries that are that the Democrats and the technocrats accommodate, but the Republicans fully acquiesce to. And we need to make these distinctions. Now, that said, the way climate change has been presented and positioned is that instead of an issue that is, in fact, a very class-based one, and also a very one that also reflects a lot of global inequalities in terms of how the effects are distributed along geographic and certainly class lines, so that if we were really addressing it in a kind of broad-based democratic socialistic way, there would be a lot of broad benefits for people that wouldn't be this sort of in the realm of these very abstracted conversations that climate change seems to take place on right now. Because it seems like the way climate change is positioned is that there's people who fly to international meetings and they're, elite people who go to summits and they care about these abstract targets. And they're not even doing a sufficient job even in those terms. And then, the Donald Trumps of the world make their hucksterish sell for, jobs and, putting those things into opposition. Can you explain where your position kind of comes in of like the actual approach to deal with climate is the future of work. It's also the future of leisure, and neither the demagoguery of Trump nor the top-downness of the technocrats are going to get us there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I totally agree that the sort of, obviously Trump is sort of, as in many policies, is represents it's not kind of just both sides are bad or something. Trump is I think quite horrifying turn towards complete rejection of science, now like banning people who work for the EPA from talking about climate change, like a really turn towards taking up this, fossil fuel industry propagated lie that climate change is not a real thing, and so on. But I do think that, as with many policies, it does illustrate the limits of what about the Obama administration's approach and sort of people in that camp's approach to the issue is. And I think the extent to which the debate has gotten stuck in, as you say, these sort of abstract targets, but especially do you believe in climate change or not? And if you do, there's not even a clear sense of what you do. You just sort of support climate action, or it's all about, do you believe in it or not?
It's a signifier.
And, we should, and we should be, emphatic that the science is clear and so on. It really is. And it's really pretty clearly because fossil fuel companies have really pushed the sort of the question of the debate over the science, that it continues to be a debate. So we shouldn't cede ground on that. But at the same time, I think that recognizing that people need to have an actual, we need to have a vision of taking action on climate change that isn't just, scolding people about not believing in science or pointing to some really technical chart or abstract commitment that has no connection to people's lives and the ways that they would like them to be better. And so I think the places that the environmental movement and trying to build a more mass movement or connect beyond sort of self-described environmentalists has always gotten hung up on these issues of jobs and consumption, I guess you would put it, where there's either a sense that, environmental protection comes at the expense of jobs or at the expense of people's consumption and sort of, by extension, quality of life. And so this idea that environmentally sustainable future is an austere or job-killing one where people suffer for the environment. And I think we really need to reject that narrative and on both the terms of what on both fronts, so both regarding jobs and regarding people's sort of expectations for the quality of their life, and by reframing the way that we think about both, what jobs are, what work is, and what it means to, have a good life.
So dig into that a little bit more, specifically in terms of some of the issues that we're dealing, and maybe also just add, I think it's not just that it's an austere future. It's an austere future for many, but it's also a very, how did the environment become like an upper middle class issue? It's sort of on one hand, there's all these people that are going to need to keep living really simple lives because obviously we can't have the Chinese consuming like us because then we're done. But then on the other hand, the job of affluent people in the West is to kind of it's just to make all of our iPhones and our, highly consumptive lifestyles just carbon neutral. So there is a kind of weird, there's a problematic class dimension to it as well. So I guess, how did it become perceived as this upper class issue? And then specifically, when we talk about increasing quality of life, increasing jobs, increasing leisure time, what's the climate environmental manifesto for that?
Yeah. I think a lot of the, there have been versions of a sort of this tension around environment jobs for a long time, but I do think that, and as the environmental movement, as we know it today, arose in the 70s, there was a moment of, I think, a real fracturing between the environmental and labor movements. And in part that was because I think the recession in the 70s, the oil crisis, which was not actually about a shortage of energy, but, exacerbated an existing productivity slowdown, exacerbated a recession, and made it seem like there was this real sort of zero-sum game of, jobs and environment, and that you could blame job loss on, the increased environmental regulation, which was actually much more about, companies outsourcing jobs and overseas and and attempting to escape a more militant labor movement and so on. And so you but where companies are able to exploit environmentalism and environmental regulation as the scapegoat for why jobs are leaving the country, why jobs are harder to find. And so I think that that was, actually, a lot of environmental pollution also got outsourced along with like the factories and jobs. But I think at this time people end up environmental consciousness that was pretty strong in the 60s and 70s, and was also connected to various environmental, like what we would today call environmental justice struggles around pollution and working class areas and so on, but has become, I think, through like the 80s and 90s became more partisan, in that it was kind of associated with a democratic or like liberal middle class position, but less radical, and not seen as something that was about cleaner and safer environments for people who live near factories or in sites of extraction or things like that. Although, at the same time, I think there's been a lot of really important work on environmental justice over the past several decades. And so I also, want to push back on it's just a middle class issue, because I think in many ways that's, there's
how
a base
it's been
of
publicly
environmentalism
framed, I think, less so than the truth.
Yeah.
I think that's just kind of more the way it's been positioned. But now, just as we sort of move in the last couple of minutes here, though, do you get specifically, though, into how this would look? And I want to really get more into more of these specifics. You talk about something called Canada's LEAP Manifesto, which was, and I'm quoting you now, was a document produced by a cluster of labor, environmental, and indigenous groups. The manifesto advocates in plain terms for an economy centered on caring for one another and caring for the planet. That would mean working less time for higher wages, spending the time we saved with our loved ones and communities, and orienting the work we do towards ending racial and gender inequality, generating energy without destroying ecosystems, and creating ownership structures that return wealth to people and communities rather than extracting it from them. This is the type of model that can ground greening our cities, creating civilian conservation corps, like you mentioned that we had during the New Deal, and expanding them, mass public transit, reclaiming wealth in the form of collective ownership of enterprises. Is this the type of fusion you're talking about, and how does that look in terms of how movements can integrate today to make that happen?
Yeah, so I think the LEAP Manifesto is a really fascinating and great document. Produced, it's a Canadian manifesto produced by a group of, or a coalition of labor, environmental, and indigenous groups, and I think it's really a very interesting model to trying to put forth a vision of a different kind of economy, different kinds of work, and a different, vision for what we want our lives to be like, that takes a lot of cues from I think socialist feminist thinking around what people call social reproduction, which is about how the work that it takes to make daily life both possible and ideally good, and pleasurable and enjoyable. And so I think that this is where the sort of imperative to rethink jobs and what kinds of how we can have good work for people that's not in tension with the environment, and also good lives that aren't, excessively resource intensive, comes together. So that in a way that recognizes that the kinds of work that we need more of are actually the kinds of work that are growing in places like the U.S., which are like things like care work, education, work that is, oriented towards making people's lives better, towards doing things that people want and need, that doesn't consume huge amounts of resources, or generate huge amounts of carbon emissions. and which I think, is really also a lot of political potential in places like the U.S. where a growing percentage of the working class actually is already doing that kind of work.
Yeah, that's to be really clear about that. These are the jobs, to use that cliche, these are the jobs of the future regardless. You can go to any, quote unquote, mainstream representation of the future of employment and how much of the economy will jobs in all aspects of the service sector be, whether we're talking about being, working as a doctor or a nurse or a yoga teacher or, someone in some type of sales. Like, these types of professions are what is going to be created to the extent there is formal job creation in late stage capitalist economy. So the question is not whether those jobs will be in the kind of cluster you're talking about. The question will be how will they be organized, whether people can make a living out of them, and whether they're to actually benefit community or just another source of narrow profit extraction for capital.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think it's, how can those jobs be jobs that are oriented towards the things people, actually both want to be doing and, providing some kinds of services that people actually need. And so I think that's where all of the, job growth projections are currently, and yet there's a lot of those jobs are currently underpaid and unionized, really challenging, and I think often under-recognized as like real work or important work. And so I think organizing that kind of work in new ways and in ways that is, where we should also, I think, as with other kinds of work, want to do like less of it and distribute it broadly and have plenty of time for leisure and spending time doing things other than work, but also recognize that there are kinds of work that are about making the work of daily life not just a matter of survival, but of living a good life, of not just sort of getting through the day, but having like in a public sense, like spaces of of leisure that's collective, of communal luxury, of recreation and art and culture, and all of the things we actually really, I think, value in our lives and don't probably get enough of, and that are also part of, I think, a vision of how we can have, an economy and work for people that is not that's not environmentally destructive.
Well, Alyssa Battistoni, the piece is Living, Not Just Surviving. It's in the Jacobin. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you. Okay, everybody. Before we get to the fun half, and the number is 646-257-3920, I'm going to turn on the IMs now. It's voting day tomorrow in a couple parts of the country, and I'm going to give you from they're all necessary, and I'm going to go in descending order from most to least exciting. But the first one is highly specific. If you live in the 35th district in New York City, in Brooklyn, Jabari Brisport is running an incredible campaign.
He's got a Green New Deal.
He's running as a DSA candidate. He's running as a Green candidate, which I have no problem with on a local level.
No,
New York City is exactly the type of place where we do live in a one-party town, and whether it's through going in the party on the left and doing DSA affiliated, or running as an independent or a Green or a socialist, or primarily affiliating with working families. I mean, this town needs a serious injection of unapologetic radical politics, and Jabari's running on serious. I mean, the housing crisis and inequality is obviously the defining issue of the day. Gentrification, of course, racial abuse and policing. I would go check out Jabari Brisport. I mean, I can't, speak as sort of freely on this show as mine, but I mean, I'm certainly voting for him, and
me too.
Yes, and incredibly excited about his race, and people should go check out Jabari Brisport. In New Jersey, Phil Murphy. Look, he's a former Goldman guy. That's obviously not remotely a strike in his favor. But he's actually running. I mean, first of all, that's a practical one. You need a Democrat back in that mansion, especially with Menendez on the verge of maybe being removed. So making sure a Democrat keeps that Senate seat is what's going to, stave off potentially another push to destroy health care. And it's also going to be an important part of not, this new, of course, massive wealth redistribution that the Republican tax plan is. So we need that. And then for what it's worth, Murphy is actually campaigning on a state bank for low interest, like in public interest loans and the Dakota model, which would be great. He's all in on a $15 living wage. And he's actually running a pretty solidly progressive campaign of the centrist mainstream variety. But that is certainly a vast improvement over Chris Christie and Chris Christie's successor. So let's take care of business and get Phil Murphy elected as governor of New Jersey.
I voted my ballot for that man, and I think Wisniewski challenging him in the primary definitely pulled him left, and that's what we need going forward. It's
exactly what we need going forward, and he seemed to be. Now, look, Virginia, Ralph Northam, look, in the long term, Democrats need to stop putting up these kind of candidates. He actually has a few things going for him. Look up his record on schools, his critique of Betsy DeVos. He's actually well to the left of Barack Obama on those types of on education issues, privatization, and so on. He's made some of the right noises on the environment and healthcare. He made the sanctuary cities comment disgusting, stupid, deplorable, probably not even in a kind of narrow sense politically necessary. But Ed Gillespie, but this is the one where it's like people need, again, this dumb position, it just doesn't work. It doesn't, there's no strategy behind it. And if the experience of Donald Trump being president and how much the spectrum has been pulled and the fact that so much energy is being fought not to expand the field to the left and not in that long-term win of a socialism over barbarism, but just basically to maintain some decent technocratic centrism and try to not fully pull the world into full neo-authoritarian oligarchy, which I know we were already there. But if you can't recognize that this is a massive pull further, then you're just not being real. And Ed Gillespie is the worst of all worlds. He is running a Trump-style, incredibly bigoted and xenophobic campaign, which Republicans will replicate across the country. And that will mean practically more incidents of hate, more racially motivated crimes. It will mean more attacks on people, supporting the terror campaign that this administration is implementing against immigrant communities. And then on top of it, Ed Gillespie's running as a Trump Republican, and he's also a Bush Republican. So his background is as, a Republican Party figure who raised money from every type of despicable corporate interest you can imagine. He is going to be a governor who, when redistricting comes up, will write districts that favor Republicans, which is very dangerous, obviously moving forward, and non-democratic. He will absolutely push an agenda that is a pure 1% agenda that will hurt the vulnerable, that will hurt anybody in Virginia that is poor or gay or of color or transgender. He'll have a relentless war against them. And
also black.
God, don't forget the blacks, the original people to terrorize. And I guess the other original people we terrorized, we killed all of them. I don't even know if they're in Virginia. So, this is the classic move that, there was a better candidate in the primary of Perriello. He lost. Now, do you go and expend a little bit of your time to vote for the better of and by the way, like for all of Northam's flaws, like the clear, the vastly better, the worth a couple minutes of your fucking time better candidate? Or, do you shoot yourself and many other people in the foot by letting a incredibly unethical, massive sleaze running a xenophobic campaign and an old-style corporate Tammany Bush Republican be elected governor of Virginia. It's a no-brainer. I'm sorry, this isn't difficult. Definitely go vote for Ralph Northam. And you wanted to say this is important too.
This sort of sprung up following the Cy Vance revelations. Mark Fleedner, he's a guy. He seems really good. DSA sort of. I don't know if officially endorsed him, but I know a bunch of DSA people I know have been trying to pump him. So if you live in Manhattan, Mark Fleedner, write in for DA.
Yes. Every place that is a one-party D-town, you should be going after them on all fronts. And if you're in a one-party Republican town, I'd take over your local Democratic apparatus or whatever. Create a new one. I don't think it really matters. But
either or, as long as you're doing something.
Either or, as long as you're doing something. But on gubernatorial races like in New Jersey and Virginia, get out there, vote D. And I think you could literally send a tweet that criticizes the Democratic Party and their utter whackness on the same day that you vote for one of those candidates. It's this amazing thing called multitasking. We tomorrow on my show, on the Michael Brooks Show, I'm hosting Benjamin Dixon and ContraPoints, and then Neda Khan will be in studio for postgame. This past weekend, the primer was on CLR James, Trinidadian Marxist theorist, historian, author of Black Jacobins. And if you go and if you've subscribed to Michael Brooks Show on iTunes, we have an unlocked postgame. We have an unlocked history of Silicon Valley fascism. And if in order to get the whole thing, which over 760 of you have done, which is amazing, and we're going to continue to grow, go to patreon.com/TMBS. We will be right back, everybody. Hey, folks, don't forget one search on tripping.com lets you filter and compare and sort over 10 million available properties on trusted sites like VRBO, TripAdvisor, Booking.com, and more. Don't wonder if you're getting the best deal on that New Year's Eve cabin or winter beach vacation. Save an average of 18% per night by booking with tripping.com. Bottom line, to save time and money while booking the perfect vacation rental, head to tripping.com/majority today. That's TRIPPING.com/majority.
To help with connectivity.
To help with connectivity. Oh my God. Let's go to the phones. You're calling from, is that ready, Maddie?
Yep.
You're calling from a 605 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Malik in Minnesota.
Hey, Malik. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I wanted to give you guys a kudos for that movie guest that you had on Friday. Dude's hilarious.
Larry Murphy. Yeah, he's a funny guy. Really funny guy.
Yeah. Whatever, I don't know who you got to go down on to get him on more, but take one for the team, Michael. We need more of that guy.
That's an interesting
and then I also
thought process you have there, Malik.
I had a bit of a, and I didn't get a chance to listen to the first part of the show, but I wasn't sure if you guys had said anything about the more revelations that came out after Friday about the DNC stuff and how it was kind of misleading what Donna Brazile initially sort of said.
Yeah, I guess there's and Sam will get into this a lot more than me, but I guess there's some notion that she was confusing dates, that the agreement she was referring to was apparently signed after the primary. I mean, I honestly...
Right. Well,
yeah, I don't care.
But I guess my thing was, well, but you guys, you and Mr. Leck in particular kind of, you kind of responded in a way that revelation or that Donna Brazile's accusations confirmed everything.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Malik. Who do I got to go down on to make you stop being so much of a cuck? I'm sorry. Finish your point.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
No, it's cool. I feel like, the Bernie wing, and I supported Bernie, so I'm not, it's not like I'm some Hillary shill like Chris Hayes. But
Chris Hayes, Malik.
The Bernie wing used that to really jump all over the DNC and Hillary, and really had nothing to do with anything. And now there's not going to be any mea culpa. And
here's what let me just say. Let me just say what I think. Well, all right. I'm going to try to distill all my thinking on this really briefly because somebody sent me something the day after I did the show saying Donna Brazile is fucking up her dates, and that totally could be true. I think that here's how I'd break it down. I thought and spent a lot of time, and all of us did, particularly during the general, doing a lot of stop freaking out about the DNC. Make sure to vote for Hillary if you live in a swing state because that's obvious. And let's stop with the melodrama. And that's what I was telling people on my side of that. Now, there is no question that to the extent that it was relevant, the DNC, if you don't think for a second that obviously everybody, and of course Debbie Wasserman Schultz, in the DNC establishment and apparatus was pro-Hillary, that would be utterly delusional and insane, right?
Yeah.
So
how could
I think
the Democratic Party not want to support the Democrat? I mean,
I can't. I don't have time for that.
Really?
That's who cares about all that. I mean, I don't. That to me is no truck. I don't. Okay. That's who gives a shit. And by the way, if you want to get into that Democratic. I don't know, maybe the time that they were psyched to, support Arlen Specter switching parties after he'd been a Republican for decades, maybe the time that Democrats, got behind Ralph Northam over, Tom Perriello, even though he had voted for Bush twice. And by the way, I should say again, vote for Ralph Northam. But I don't care about all that shit. Okay, whatever. Bernie's not a Democrat. Who gives a fuck? And that's not why they all supported Hillary. They supported Hillary because they all have the same patronage systems and consulting networks. And, that was where people were expecting to get a job and forward their careers. That's pretty obvious. I think that, look, there's definitely people, and at this point, like, people vastly overstate the power of the DNC.
I mean, we should just establish what's true about it now. I think the Bernie camp is still saying that the Clinton camp was given access. And again, I'm not saying this is important or decisive. I'm just saying that the DNC gave the Hillary people prior to the general, but supposedly for the general, vetoes over staffing decisions. And Bernie's people are saying we weren't getting that. Now, that's the sort of thing I think you could expect, given in generically one person is a Democrat, generically one person is a non-independent part. Like, fine if you want to mention that, but I mean, you could at least mention that it's true. And yeah, like Donna Brazil got out.
I'm speaking more to like when Elizabeth Warren goes on TV and says the primary was rigged.
Yes, I agree with that. I don't know why
Donna Brazil
she
said,
did it because
she's
doing politics.
Right.
Like this is the thing though that I don't. But Malik, I don't care either. But but it mattered. Look. If her saying that it was rigged is emotionally satisfying to people and it helps them move forward, and it also acknowledges the fact that obviously there was a bias, who cares? Great. Like, I was debunking silly conspiracy theories about this for two reasons. One, because people really went in on crazy shit that was just wrong and debunkable. Like, there's massive voter fraud and all this stuff. That's nonsense. Okay, and that's always important to debunk that sort of thing. And then number two was like, look, it's August and we're about to elect like a clown fascist. It's not the time to bitch about the primary. We got things to do. But right now, and by the way, especially, look, I even was generous to Tom Perez. But these people made sure that Tom Perez got elected. They did all sorts of Islamophobic rumors against Keith Ellison. And you know what? They put it together. Tom Perez won more votes than Keith Ellison. That wasn't, it wasn't quote unquote rigged, but it certainly was a self-interested, complacent group of people voting more in their self-interest than the interest of the success of their party. And now we have a new guy who sucks at fundraising, sucks on TV, takes a teaching gig at Brown. At a certain point, like, whether it's done in a messy way or not, this stuff needs to be shipped out. And I get a lot of Bernie people, they take the DNC way too seriously. There's a lot of melodrama. There's a lot of conspiracy theories. There's a lot of overstatement. But the bottom line is there a complacent DNC class that was pro-Hillary? Absolutely. Were they unfair to Bernie in a process they were supposed to be neutral on? Obviously. Is there a bunch of people who are clearly incompetent at their jobs, evidence electoral performance, who keep getting contracts, keep getting hired, keep doing the same things? The same idiots who did, Osif's ridiculous melodramatic fundraising emails, I think they're, advising Northam. And, at a certain point, it's like, we're not just having a left versus, center debate. We're also having like I actually want to win these races. I'll speak for me. Like, I think on one hand, obviously the solutions that we need to have to deal with the real predicament we're in.
Speak for you. Was the DNC primary rigged? Yes or no?
How do you mean rigged?
Yeah, that's the thing.
How do you mean rigged?
You use that terminology to say it was rigged.
Well, obviously, I have personally not used that, so that kind of gives you your answer.
Like,
but I don't.
It depends.
But Elizabeth Warren doing it does not make me lose sleep.
It is semantic. It is completely semantic. Like the definition Sam had, which is that it made it. Let me finish this.
There's value, there's a risk in adopting that type of language. You're adopting the exact same type of language that Trump uses when he says the system is rigged. This is rigged. And when you
more broadly, the system is definitely rigged.
Hops in the part on TV and says, yes, it was rigged.
More broadly, the system is rigged, and Democrats should use that language much more. For sure.
I think it's a bit silly to say, like, that's not why Bernie lost, right? Like, let's say you're shooting some bad.
Agreed.
like you're doing I don't know, like what's that game where you throw a ball at a dunk tank, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's say the mechanism is stuck, so like you can't actually like win it, right? But the person in this analogy is getting a bit forced, but
did you get that bong water sound drop for yourself that we're supposed to use on my show? Oh,
I'm saying like. Let's say there's, I'm
right.
gonna
easy
bail
game,
on that.
man. No. Look,
that was good. Bernie wasn't trying to win anyway, right? That's why. That's the fundamental reason why he didn't win. But that doesn't mean like rigging. It was. Things were done for him.
Was it an even playing field for him? Of course not. But on the other hand, like now rigging the way Sam defined it, no, of course it wasn't rigged like that. But and moving forward, in 2020, I mean, maybe not. But also, and look, and there's all sorts of ridiculous arguments on the other side about superdelegates and everything. A lot of people have made idiots of themselves in this process, including, people that I would generally agree with. And they've vastly overstated the importance of the DNC. But at the same time, like, just as a generic proposition, was this institution fair to both of its major candidates? And were people inside the apparatus giving an equal lookout? Of course not. That's mind-blowingly obvious. And, and it also means that in ways that people, that aren't, rigged, that would be the wrong word, but just obvious and silly hypocrisies. I mean, people ran around the country saying that, acting as if Bernie was running some type of white nationalist grievance campaign, which was insane.
Well,
and he was literally running the campaign that Hillary ran in 08. Okay.
All, but yeah.
But I don't.
Nor would I characterize the Bernie wing as the sort of Clinton conspiracies. But I do think the Bernie wing is which I would consider myself a part of. That it is mainstream in the Bernie wing. I was just talking to an actual candidate, state candidate, last week on Friday about that, who used that terminology.
But who
said
cares?
That the DNC had rigged the primary.
But who cares?
So I think
cares?
that's mainstream on
but who cares?
the Bernie wing, and I don't think that
but
that's...
so what?
Well,
what difference does it make?
People to show up and get
He's
involved
running
with
for
Democrats,
office himself, dude. You just identified somebody where it's clearly having zero demonstrable effect on what he's doing. Who cares? Like if Donna Brazile wrote a flawed, self-serving
but what
book.
What about the other people? What about the people you need to get involved? Like
I think Bernie got more people involved
in
in any modern Democratic race than certainly since Obama in 08. That's not even remotely debatable.
There's not denying that. But are they going to want to stay involved when people keep saying, well, the DNC...
Yeah, there's an element here. I agree with this. I think there's an element to this. That when people on the left get fixated on the DNC, it's a way to not do anything because they're going to just steal it from you anyway. And I agree with that. Like that's stupid. To take this Donna Brazile case as an example that party is static and stuck as a corporate just vessel is I think the wrong one. I think it's a really weak institution.
Well, yeah, that's the real lesson to draw from her.
Right.
Is that this place is bankrupt shell. And it's run by mediocre careerists. And, but no, look, but again, I don't know if the stats bear this out. Like, again, it was less than 10% of Bernie voters voted for Trump. Bernie campaigned his ass off for Hillary, even though, he did that.
Even though it's rigged.
And we know it's rigged. And there's countless candidates that, his wing is putting forward. And frankly, in 2020, and this is what I would tell the Bernie people, if you honestly, if you're already, presetting this as your conspiracy theory escape hatch, it's foolish and it's just not an integrated way of looking at politics. And the DNC is not all that powerful and you can have influence over it. But at the same time, I get why people are... There's clumsy ways of saying and inaccurate and exaggerated ways of saying things that are true, right? Is the DNC a very self-interested and failing institution that, of course, wasn't neutral between Bernie and Hillary?
They're failing everything.
They're failing every day, and they literally are. And again, this is where someone like me comes in and is like, I have a strong ideological desire, but I'm also like, guys. what the fuck? How are these idiots still getting consulting contracts? Like, how is this still working? And, you know, I just don't. So, yes, I think maybe there's an element of people who it's an emotional catharsis for them and they want to watch silly videos on YouTube and keep relitigating the same experiences again and again and again and again. And, you know, I think it's a very immature. I mean, if you want to know it's really rigged, it's capitalism, not the DNC. But I also just
I don't know.
wouldn't.
Capitalism's great.
I think honestly, Elizabeth Warren saying that does more to bring those people back in the party than her not, because they're hearing. You know what it also does,
emotionally
heard.
It propels the DNC rigged to the center of conversation for the next week, which it has done, and that's the thing that, you know, that's the thing that causes issues.
But what?
When you move that to the center stage.
For who? Whose issues?
By saying it's rigged.
But who?
Well, I think for mainstream conversation.
But what does that play out in? Like, look, if there is an exit poll in Virginia.
It plays out in us not talking about other issues that are more important. Like, we're still, I mean, listen to us now. We're relitigating.
Well, I wasn't planning on doing it.
Know.
But, I mean, No,
you spent Friday doing it. I mean, that's why I called.
Yeah, we need to trash them a little bit. Get a little bit out of the system. It's good. It's good.
And
sometimes
I don't know
that
I don't think that if a given election goes the wrong way tomorrow, it's because I don't think
if there is an exit poll that says
agree.
that Ralph Northam didn't turn people out in the Virginia DC suburbs because progressive YouTube shows were noting that perhaps DNC hacks preferred Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders, I will write you a check for a case of kombucha.
I mean, Elizabeth Warren wasn't on your show, but
whatever.
I mean, your point.
Dude, I'm telling you, I think Elizabeth Warren saying that does more to re-engage those people in the Democratic primary than not. Because they don't hear it as...
I guess
they don't hear it as, oh, it's rigged. They hear it as like, oh, now
more people to participate with the DNC.
Why?
That's all. That's all. The only thing, you know, I just worry about that, and I think that, you know, by continuing to relitigate this as the burning wing of the party, which I would say Elizabeth Warren is, you're not advancing. You know, you're not talking about things that are really more important.
You know, honestly, dude,
you're kind of
here's what I would say. If
functionally
what happens is that people start losing consulting contracts and the Clintons go away and they actually do some progress on their platform and they figure out with Tom Perez or otherwise how to have a semi-competent institution that knows how to raise money and speak effectively on television, that will be great for us. That will be indispensable. Like the thing that people don't understand is like, I practically will make the case for Hillary Clinton or Ralph Northam when the time comes. And that's where people get on the dumb thing and they don't understand. They don't make distinctions and they can't see that obviously one thing is better than the other. And that's basic deductive reasoning. But when we're not doing that, these people do need to not necessarily go, but their role and their influence needs to be vastly minimized. They're not successful at what they do. And you know, it's politics. It's not like some tea room somewhere. People are going to exaggerate. People are going to freak out. The center is exaggerated and freaked out. All I've heard from these people for the past, 11 months is that, Russia, invented slavery so that they could do a Black Lives Matter Facebook ad that lost Hillary the election. I mean, everybody's losing their minds.
Yeah, I guess I haven't seen the. I'll be honest. Like I watch MSNBC. I listen to you guys, etc. I haven't seen the center really making a crazy case about Russia.
You don't watch You don't watch MSNBC's primetime lineup, and you don't think that maybe they're a little hyperventilating.
Well, I watch Hayes. But
well, Hayes is much chiller on that subject, and also, and Joy Reid says countless, just inane things about Bernie and
Joy Reid is right more often than she's wrong, though. And
about what?
People can say stuff and be wrong
about
every
what?
Once in a while.
Then Elizabeth Warren can say it, and I can say it.
Joy Reid is certainly right.
No, I don't know.
I think there's a bit of an obsession with Joy Reid that I also find a little strange, but
I don't have
yeah,
an
I'm just not
obsession
real-
with Joy Reid. I don't look. This is going in circles. I get that you're, but it's like she's
rewind and play how much her name comes up. But I mean, that's another story.
Wait, watch who much name?
Don't know how
in what show? In my show?
No, on this show.
Joy Reid's name comes up? Are you serious?
Yes.
Dude, I'm not even like a tenth of the time that Jimmy Dore's name comes up. What are you talking about?
Well, but Jimmy Dore's a douche. I would have put Jimmy Dore and Joy Reid in the same category. So
I
understand why
absolutely
Jimmy
would, because they're both actively misleading.
See, that's dumb right there. That's dumb. Like, come on. Are you kidding me?
No. Joy Reid's assessment of the Democratic Party and where it's going and how it works from a left perspective is delusional. And yes, she knows more than Jimmy Dore. I'll give you that.
Okay,
her assessment of how the Democratic Party works and the Bernie coalition, and saying, again, the same nonsense that Bernie's whole thing is about reaching out to Reagan voters, is disingenuous at best. And the fact that you can't see that.
I don't know. I think Bernie's message is trying to appeal to a certain, working class white voter that.
Right. So a guy who won all under 35s overwhelmingly with an intergenerational message is just secretly trying to reach Reagan voters. That makes total sense. I mean,
no,
come on,
I never said that. That's not at all what I said.
All right.
But I do think his message was aimed at that. I mean, he also made a comment.
All right, man, I got to jump.
You guys haven't addressed. All right.
Thanks.
Adios.
You're calling from a 269 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hi. Sorry, I just put a breadstick in my mouth, but this is Isha, and I'm calling from New York.
Hey, Isha, how you doing?
Good. Sorry. Okay. Now I finished eating the breadstick.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I just wanted to call and talk about the whole Saudi thing.
Okay.
Okay. So, actually, right around noon, the Saudi whistleblower named Mujtahid has really explosive allegations regarding Trump and Mohammed bin Salman. But I will say that later for the first quick recap of what happened over the weekend. So the king is King Salman, and his oldest son is Mohammed bin Salman. And for all practical purposes, you can think of him as Saudi's Don Jr. Like, he's probably just about as smart as Don Jr. And so basically over the weekend, he quickly started. Okay, and his dad is kind of a vegetable for the most part. He quickly started this purge. And what he did was, if you look at the Saudi family tree, he basically charged all the people who are close in line with succession with corruption. So the previous king who died, his name is Abdullah bin Abdulaziz. His son Mithab was arrested. And then the prince who owns Twitter, Al-Walid, was arrested. And also actually Osama bin Laden's brother was arrested, and basically the CEO of both of the Saudi news stations, like their version of Fox News and MSNBC, was also arrested, along with Prince Turki Nasser.
So but we should, So he's obviously, they're using these corruption charges to consolidate base for him moving forward. And so, do you have anything else to add to it?
Oh yeah. And another thing is that there was another. Okay, so one of the princes in custody, he died. He died, and another towards the Yemeni border, and he had a helicopter. And it took off, and it mysteriously ended up killing everyone. And
I mentioned that at the opening.
Okay. And the last thing I wanted to add is apparently last year when the Mohammed bin Salman came to this is from the whistleblower, came to the White House in a huff, Obama said he was supporting Prince Nayef and not him. But apparently, according to this whistleblower, in May 27, somehow, like, some deal happened between Trump and Mohammed bin Salman where there was like $1 billion transaction, that would personally benefit Trump. And
Will
then
you send an article
some-
about there? Tweet that at me. I believe it, but I just want to get the kind of facts of it before we talk about it. But and obviously, Trump has been very tight with the Saudis. They knew exactly how to play him out of the gate. And I think there's also a Jared Kushner relationship with the Saudis as well.
Oh, yeah. Actually, it's with the Qatar because he asked Qatari government for $1 billion and they told him to go screw yourself. And that's when that whole anti-Qatar agenda came up. It was in The Intercept.
All right. Thank you so much, Isha.
Okay.
All right. Let's do a little bit of sound. So obviously we know that, of course, after a mass atrocity like this, it's never time to talk about policy or the domestic arms cartel that's holding us hostage. But it is time to listen to our president, which is just a devastating thought. And here he is in Tokyo. And remember, everybody is laughing at us. And I think after this, we're going to have a sassy Trump, just as a palate cleanser. But here is the real Trump. And then we'll listen to another clip of him talking about this atrocity in his proper voice. A different atrocity, rather.
Mental health is your problem here. This was a very, based on preliminary reports, very deranged individual. A lot of problems over a long period of time. We have a lot of mental health problems in our country, as do other countries. But this isn't a guns situation. We could go into it, but it's a little bit soon to go into it.
Yeah,
but
soon.
Fortunately, somebody else had a gun that was shooting in the opposite direction. Otherwise, it would have been as bad as it was. It would have been much worse. But this is a mental health problem at the highest level.
Can say that again. I think that, this rambling, incoherent nonsense that this doddering conspiracy grandpa just laid out, this is essential Republican policy. There is no difference between the nonsense that he just spewed and the garbage that Paul Ryan released in response to this. Prayers, random and indirectly demonize people with mental health issues, and do nothing
too soon
to protect too soon, and do absolutely nothing to protect the public. Blood is on every single politician, gun manufacturer, and the NRA's hand again. And if they're ever, look, I didn't think they would really pass anything after Newtown. But if there was ever a moment to teach you that these guys are never going to hold the industry that owns them in any way accountable, even with the most modest, tepid, incremental, safe reforms, that should have taught you. Here is sassy Trump. I forget which. This was after the Vegas atrocity, and we were comforted by his words of wisdom then as well.
We also continue to pray for the victims of the mass shooting in Las Vegas. We cannot erase the pain of those who lost their loved ones, but we pledge to never leave their side. We're working with them very much so, with the FBI and law enforcement, Department of Justice. It's, guess a lot of people think they understand what happened, but he was a demented, sick individual. The wires were crossed pretty badly in his brain. Extremely badly in his brain. And it's a very sad event.
Well, there it is. There's our president. You're calling from a 508 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? 508? Are you there? Nope. You're calling from a 347 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Mike.
Yo.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, hey, it's Lefty Uno on VA.
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
I wish I could say I was calling on a better time, but with the shooting yesterday and with the shit that happened in Vegas last month, I just had to get some shit off my chest about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I first heard about the shooting yesterday, first thought was, man, I hope it wasn't a brown guy.
Right.
Saying Allahu Akbar and doing it for ISIS. second thought was, when I found out it was a white guy, I was like, well, I hope it wasn't a crazy atheist, because then the right is going to use this all against us.
Right.
And then, because you know, they like to go about religion. So then I Googled it this morning, and first thing that popped up was a Fox News article, and they were talking about the family members. So right away, when I see that they're talking about the family members and the people that passed away, the guy himself is a non-issue. They don't want to talk about him. They just want to talk about the family, you know.
Right.
So one of the quotes that's quoted in the article was an uncle of one of the victims, and the guy said, yeah, maybe Jesus needed them more than we do here on Earth. And that just like,
that's disturbing.
That really messed me up.
Yeah,
no, it is disturbing. That a good portion of the population of this country believe in an ideology where it's okay to say that maybe Jesus needed them more than we do here on Earth. And out of those, there's even more people that want the end times to come. So while Republicans and pundits are wasting time today saying that, oh, now is not the time to politicize this shit, you know, they can go fuck themselves, pretty much.
Yep.
And that's all I got to say about it.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
All right, dude.
Thanks for calling, man. Hang in there.
Yep.
Reminds me of that caller we had about the evangelicals.
Yeah, it does. Exactly. All right, let me read a few IMs. Rand Paul's neighbor. I want... What's up, dude? Good job. I want MR listeners to know that as someone overly concerned with border security, the senator did a shitty job of keeping my brown leaves from falling on his lawn. Now go get your yard bags, Paulie. I want MR listeners to know that... Oh, yeah. Now go get your rake box, Rand.
I'm not sure.
So the Constitution.
My one of my buddies sent me this. It's a screen grab, so I don't know what the article's from, but it looks like maybe Washington Post. But Jim Bullington, a former member of the city commission, knows both men. He said Sunday that Boucher, who is the guy who tackled Rand Paul, is divorced and lives alone. Bullington describes Boucher as a socialist. Quote, he's pretty much the opposite of Rand Paul in every way, end quote, Bullington said in an interview. The neighbors had been known to, quote, have heated discussions about health care, Bullington said, adding that Boucher is an advocate of a national health system.
So basically, Boucher is like a national hero.
He's like Antifa super soldier number one.
He's like, yeah, Antifa super soldier happened. No, I mean, I don't want anybody to be hurt, obviously. It's terrible. But it is, you do have a picture. Like, Rand Paul
it's funny that neighbors,
he would be the guy, though, to be like, but in the Constitution, you should be able to starve children. If you don't have a notoriety from each Secretary of State,
it just makes it.
Kids.
It just makes everything so domestic. like his neighbor. First of all, he got off with like what, a misdemeanor or something like that, and not didn't get.
Well,
the book
everybody in
thrown
town must be like, dude, don't do that. But Rand is a pain in the ass.
Right.
He's
a senator.
Don't hurt anybody, but Jesus Christ. Well, hey, Rand's supposed to support prison reform.
Thomas Jefferson used to wear regular clothes.
Yeah.
Entertained.
You know that he was just like, he's like, Rand, I would just like to take this unique opportunity of being your neighbor to see if like maybe you could not be so active in the promotion of human misery. Well, according to the Constitution, and he just snapped one day. You know, no one should do it, but it's understandable.
It's a stochastic process.
I tweeted a joke about this, about like Rand being like the Constitution, and one of these like twerpy libertarians is just like, oh, so his ideas are invalid because he was assaulted? To which I would like to say, absolutely, that was my point.
No, his ideas are invalid, and he was assaulted.
Right. You know how bad? You know what I was thinking is like how bad this is actually from the perspective of like the authoritarian mindset of Republicans. Like we can joke about it all day, but we don't want anybody to be hurt. I don't want Rand Paul to be injured, right? If this happened while he was running for president, that would have just been like, he would have had to drop out a couple weeks earlier, because it would have been like, Rand, can't even handle your neighbor. This guy's going to do border security. He's getting beaten up by old socialists.
I'm gonna bring us together. Rand Paul is dividing his neighborhood.
Rand Paul can't even bring his neighbors together. And by the way, when I divide people, folks, I win. I win the division. Jeb would have even gotten in on that. Like, hey, Rand, tell your neighbor I say hi.
I hope you're all enjoying this Schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude's in the Constitution. Like, you think his dad, what do you think their relationship's like? You think it's like, oh my God, Rand, you're such a goddamn pussy. You never could win a goddamn fight. I remember I gave you a bar of gold bullion, and the Wilson boys beat the stuffing out of you and took the gold bullion right out of your hands. You didn't do a goddamn thing. You think just because I was in the House and you're in the Senate that you're somehow better than me? Well, I'll whip your ass too. You're sitting United States Senator, your goddamn socialist neighbor whips your ass, and now the police won't even give him a misdemeanor charge. If I got assaulted, I would want charges on them like they were a black guy or something. All right. Well, speaking of the Pauls, somehow this is a good random bridge to talk about white nationalism. Wonder why that works. There is a disgusting young man who is a PhD student at Georgia State University. He has been profiled, I think, by the Southern Poverty Law Center for his promotion of white supremacy. He has been
He administrates like Richard Spencer's college tours, basically.
He basically, when Richard Spencer goes to a campus, and by the way, just start ignoring Richard Spencer. I think we can start doing that.
I think it's happening.
But the thing that happened in Florida a couple weeks ago, it's like, just don't. And if you're going to go, like, just meet him with mockery and disdain and this sort of sad, horrifying, troubled group of young men that show up. Like this guy. This guy's name is Cameron Paget Scares. Or Cameron Paget, excuse me. He's a PhD student at Georgia State. And he wanted to leave the comfort of his dorm room racism and stupidity and do a little fact-finding mission. So he went to, I guess, a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood in Atlanta. And this video is so funny and so revealing on so many levels because it's basically like, here's a creepy young guy who is, in fact, taking a cell phone camera to film people without their permission and, again, be a bizarre creep. And people have a completely natural human response to this, which, by the way, is not reactive or violent in any way. And then he builds a terror scenario in his mind. So you almost can see like a micro version of how all these idiots work in this piece of video. Let's check it out.
Park because I think I'm going to be okay. I don't know. Actually going to walk around. I don't think they're going to do anything. You know, over here they have bags of food.
Yes, people buy groceries.
You know?
Yep.
Oh, of course there's going to be a coin laundry. Yeah. I'm going to walk. Let's see what happens. I'm actually going to get out in the car and walk. You know, I don't really care if I don't think they'll be I don't think they'll do anything. We'll see.
Such bravery.
Yeah, wow. Profile and courage for this kid.
It's for a school project. It's for a school project.
Project? Oh, really? What school?
Georgia State. Georgia State. I'll show you my ID. Okay, they asked me who I was videotaping, so I'm probably about to have to head out. Delgado. Yeah, I'm gonna hop back in my car. I'm hopping back in my car. I'm getting a lot of heat already. Hold on, I'm gonna cross the road really fast. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And Nothing happening.
They started saying who I was videotaping and all this, so I'm gonna have to get the hell out of here.
Oh yeah, and no one followed him. So basically, racist, stupid young idiot goes to apparently Hispanic neighborhood, observes that people have bags of food, also known as groceries,
and a laundromat,
and there's a laundromat where people clean their clothes. Walking around with like the air of a pedophile in a schoolyard. Someone says, "Hey man, what are you doing?"
Trying to look, you could tell in his shadow, he's trying to look secretive about that he's filming everything that he's doing. But of course, like he's walking around with
of course, being
his hands sort of like up to his neck filming, and people are like, "What are you filming
people
for?"
are like,
bro?
"You look creepy and disturbing," because in fact, he is creepy and disturbing. Then he goes, "Oh, no, nothing. It's a project, man. I'm a student at Georgia State. I'll show you my ID." And they're like, "That's okay. Whatever.
Well, because
leave me alone, you freak."
He probably thinks they're gonna go after him the way that he would go after someone that he suspects is
well.
strange
That's
in
his fantasy, is that
Yep.
he would be doing some racial pogrom himself, and he would be part of a mob that would assault a Hispanic person in his neighborhood. Meanwhile, these people are just like, "You're kind of a weird freak." They didn't even ask him to not film them.
It reminds me of when I first got my driver's license. I was really into the X-Files and the Bourne movies and like that sort of like espionage and secretive thing.
Right.
And I used to just drive around Bismarck, like as if I was like imagining like you take like a lane change or something like that, like as if you're James Bond or something. Like, and it's this complete like internal fantasy. And this dude's 29 years old.
29 years
old. A grad
old.
student.
Exactly.
And he's stuck in his like little racist fantasies.
He's in his like little racist X-Files.
He's suspicious of coin laundromats.
Coin laundromats. And then after scurrying away, he says a Hispanic name of something and then says there's too much heat and he needs to get back in his car. This whole time, there's no one even in his vicinity. And no one has said anything more.
Yeah, there's literally not a person makes an appearance on the tape, if for those listening.
Yes.
And it looks just like a regular suburban.
It's just like he's like literally in a
parking.
He's like in a strip mall somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's people going about their business. He's an idiot. I want to be clear. I don't hope that anything specifically happens, but I would love if this guy ran into Rand Paul's neighbor. I should book Rand Paul's neighbor on my show. Yeah, he's a class hero.
New to the M.
I want to educate him on nonviolence, but he's obviously coming from a good place. All right, let's keep powering ahead here. Speaking of also not racism, Bill O'Reilly. Apparently, he has put aside his anger at God, rediscovered a makeup artist who will actually work with him, and is now doing his own. Like you could see here, a lot of the videos that were playing over the summer, O'Reilly had no makeup on, and he was sitting in some type of really sad, like home studio situation, and there was a lot of pathos to it. And now Bill O'Reilly is back. He has a proper studio. He has a makeup person, and what is he going to do? Oh my God, freak out about a rap album. It's like we're back in 2001. What's funny about this here, though, is that O'Reilly is going to actually simultaneously do a few things here. He's going to accurately diagnose what Snoop Dogg is doing with his new album, acknowledge that he's actually met Snoop Dogg and thinks he's a nice guy, and then proceed to say some of the most... Sometimes O'Reilly says racist stuff on the DL and he knows what he's doing, and then other times he just says profoundly racist stuff, has no idea what the fuck he's doing. And he does that several times in this clip.
Snoop Dogg, you know this guy, rap artist Snoop Dogg? Okay, so he's a master manipulator of the press. He's got an album out, Make America Crip Again. Yeah, very good. See, our slogan is, take your country back. Take your country back. Snoop Dogg's slogan is, Make America Crip Again. I think there's a little gulf. Anyway, on his album cover, he's got a dead president where he's standing over it, and that president's Donald Trump. He did it on purpose to get on, guys like me to talk about it.
It was
I wanted
accident.
to tell. The reason I'm even mentioning is I met him twice. Snoop Dogg. Once at the Kennedy Center Honors when I introduced Herbie Hancock, and once at the Fallon Show backstage. It couldn't have been nicer. he couldn't have been nicer, this guy. He wasn't like a lot of them. It wasn't surly and, very nice. I talked to him briefly, but he's doing this to sell his rap album. So I'm not upset about it. I expect it.
So basically what Bill O'Reilly did there is he did say correctly that Snoop Dogg's calling his album Make America Crip Again and standing over a dead body of Donald Trump is in fact a way of getting media attention. That's correct. Apparently, and then he says his slogan is a gang homage to the roots of Snoop Dogg's career, where he did in fact glorify gang violence and affiliate with the Crips. Our slogan is take your country back, which is basically like an indirect dog whistle to like Jim Crow. So yeah, there is a little bit of a gulf there. And then Bill O'Reilly says, he's a really nice guy. He wasn't surly like a lot of them are. And my guess would be that perhaps, I don't know this, but my opinion is that maybe Bill O'Reilly might have had most of his interactions with black people might have either been being on national television, saying things like, if you pulled your pants up, then maybe cops wouldn't shoot you in the face. Or, like going to a makeup lady and be like, come on, Mochaccino. I don't get a date? I don't get a date? What's the matter? Foxy Brown, Pram Greer. I'm going to guess that a lot of black people specifically were surly to Bill O'Reilly, because I'm going to guess that his main interactions with black people were racially hustling them on national television or potentially sexually harassing them in the office. Probably doesn't leave that much room.
I want more iced tea.
Yeah, that might have gotten a surly response. And in fact, I thought you already learned that you went uptown to Harlem to eat with Al Sharpton, and the waiter said, would you like anything else with that, sir? Instead of like, yo, motherfucker, why you here, O'Reilly ass motherfucker? I thought you had already had this great breakthrough back like over 10 years ago that a lot of them weren't surly. Oh, Bill O'Reilly's great. He's just such an incredible piece of garbage. I actually thought that it was kind of it for him a couple of weeks ago. I thought the whole I blame God. I was like, all right, that might be the last clip.
I think this might be sort of a long denouement. It's interesting because we were talking before the show, a lot of what made him was the stage. Like, he's a good broadcaster and everything, right. But that he was broadcasting to that many people on that network was a big part of it. Now he's just some guy with a studio.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Hear him reminisce about the times he met Snoop Dogg.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's actually the even deeper subtext. Is there was a time when I introduced Herbie Hancock. He was a cool cat. He was the least surly one of them I ever met. And then I met Snoop, and it was great. I was a big star. And there was just all sorts of backdoor settlements happening right and left, and I could harass any woman in the building. Those were the days.
That's where this chapter is going to get interesting. is the epilogue of the O'Reilly era.
Guy's gonna be
my back pages.
It's gonna be like one of those declines when it's the guy who the drug kingpin who was in their prime. They were smuggling kilos and getting away with it, and then several years later, all of a sudden, they're arrested with a dime bag heroin habit. O'Reilly's gonna get picked up outside of a Wendy's, being he's harassing me. They're cuff him. Wasn't this the same asshole who paid a private detective to follow you, Bob? Yeah, it is. Hey, Bill, maybe we wouldn't rough you up in the car if your suit was pressed. That would be the ultimate poetic justice. Bill O'Reilly gets picked up for sexual harassment, and then the cops beat on him for not having a properly pressed suit. and looking at them wrong. I don't know, Bill, you're a little surly. I need to work you over in the squad car a little bit.
You surly Irishman.
I feel threatened. Bill, you reaching in your pocket, Bill?
Bill actually is very tall, too.
Yeah, he's tall and he's surly. And he has a and he has a very rage-filled face.
He's very lucky that the police in his advanced.
That's right. That's right. There's definitely he was lucky to be born after the Irish became white.
Not that police is advanced. Never mind.
Yeah, it's best for us. Okay, all right. Even without Bill O'Reilly, Fox News is still one of the stupidest things that exists in media, and three of the dumbest people. You guys, I don't even know if you gave me these people's names. We have John Huntsman's daughter,
Pete Hegseth.
Pete Hegseth, who I have no idea who that is. Is he the one who looks
like
Chris
slick
Kobach?
Back hair, yeah.
He's the one who looks like Chris Kobach a little bit. And then there is a black guy, which is probably a good way of introducing somebody on Fox who's a black guy.
That's how he introduces
a black
himself.
guy. That's literally how he introduces himself. And he's doing his job. He basically keeps quiet and then makes like a weird attempt to tie Obama to the nonsense that they're talking about. But if you recall, Saturday was supposed to be a very special day. There was supposed to be Antifa super soldiers that finally put the hurting on white people and small business owners across the country that they so desperately deserve to have. Basically, a couple of jokesters on Twitter basically tweeted out that, like, hey, on this Saturday, there's going to be an Antifa brigade and they're going to behead, like, people who own, like mini marts or something. And, of course, these, chud morons and white supremacists were like, all right, we got to be ready. We got to be ready. And then, of course, like all of these things, it never happens. Tomorrow on my show, Nation of Islam Obama is actually orchestrating the secret super soldier Antifa, and there had to be a change of plans, which he will describe on the Michael Brooks show tomorrow at 7 p.m. But that being said, outside of that secret information from Nation of Islam Obama, who, of course, orchestrates this army, nothing happened on Saturday. It was loosely correlated, I guess, in people's minds with the anti-fascism protests, which were Refuse Fascism, which were organized by this kind of odd Workers' World Party, which is essentially a small communist cult with a, kind of cult of personality around some old communist guy. They're a very marginal group, but they are pretty effective organizers. And they had a few protests, and that was basically it. But Fox News, they were sweating bullets, and it looks like they literally, not bullets, they dodged like the jihad. Here are the idiots at Fox.
And first it was violence on college campuses. Now Antifa anarchists ready to cause chaos today, including here in New York City in Times Square. They say they're going to overthrow the president.
I'll be staying out of that area.
Well, welcome back to Fox and Friends. Just a few blocks from here, a couple hours from now, the group known as Antifa, anti-fascists, they're going to be holding one of 20 protests being held across the country. The group Antifa Refuse Fascism is planning 20 rallies across the country to try to drive President Trump and Vice President Mike Pence, drive them from power using violence.
Because they claim that they're a dictatorship and
That's
they
right.
need to remove them from office. So they're trying to motivate as many people as possible to come out to these 20 locations. And as we've seen in the past, many times they get violent.
Of course, that's their point. They believe...
Which is sort of hypocritical, no?
You would think
ironic?
so, but they believe they're at such a brink that they can use violence. Ends justify the means of violence. This group called Refuse Fascism actually has a lot of ties to the Revolutionary Communist Party. Because communists are never fascists.
No, it always works out well for the people that live in communist countries.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm sure we'll be following these, and I'm sure tomorrow morning we'll have information on it, because these guys show up in black masks with clubs, and they want to confront people, and they want to agitate, and they want the headlines, they want the coverage. I mean, we're talking about it right now, but we're talking about it because you need to expose the violent depths of what the far left is doing and how radical they are in the way they will oppose this president.
Well, not speaking for all blacks, but as a black man in America, my question is, why didn't they do this under Obama? We have suffered mightily. I mean, whether you look at the prison population, you look at business starts, you look at crime in black neighborhoods and all the different things that are going on. We've lived under a regime that needed to end years ago. And now suddenly Donald Trump's being blamed for what? The great economy?
Their grievances are that Donald Trump is fascist, yet they provide no evidence for what they mean by that. Actually, these are far left. These are leftists who frankly hate America, who want to overthrow it. Look at you have anarchy flags there. Happy to take on anyone else who stands for the flag or traditional values in this country. I mean, the problem is you can't even barely get the Democratic Party to disown them and the violence.
Oh, you poor male-headed brother. You'll sell your soul to the white devil for anything, huh? Some chump change on the Fox couch. John Huntsman's daughter's never going to date you, brother. Have some motherfucking dignity. I liked how he started with prison and then kind of pivoted quickly because like, oh, wait. Yeah. The administration that I'm shilling for is probably not going to address structural racism in prison. So I better say some bullshit nonsense about small businesses or something. He reminded me that was a character on Howard Stern called King of All Blacks. He literally just did that for the fight. Not to speak for all blacks. And you know that there's a bunch of like old racist assholes at home. Like, I wish he was. Wish he was speaking for all blacks. Finally, some goddamn common sense. Nancy Pelosi clarified that the Democratic House caucus does, in fact, support the Antifa super soldiers, but not that specific action. But she has called for more decentralized splinter groups to firebomb small businesses. Jesus Christ. It's funny to watch them, like, they're still, like, not exact, like, their particular type of hysteria is still calibrated a couple years behind. Because you're supposed to, like, Alex Jones would know how to do that segment. It wouldn't just be like, yeah, they're super soldiers. And, I mean, communism's like, hey, Billy, you want to split your lunch with your friend who his mom didn't make it for him? And, oh, anarchist flags, that's nice. Like, Alex Jones would be like, we told you about this a long time. Globalist. Yeah. Like, he knows how to do that bullshit.
Well, Alex Jones always has the sort of privilege of saying, like, they don't want you to know this. Whereas with Fox, with Trump in charge, like, and the Republicans in charge, you can't really do that as much. So you can't say like Obama's not like he's calling the FBI off of these Antifa people or something like that. That would be a Fox News angle, but like you can't do that right now.
Right, exactly.
I love the fear of clubs as well, as opposed to any sort of Tea Party rally that happened 8 years ago with the number of us.
Yeah, we have a bunch of fucking mouth-breathing morons carrying like semi-automatics because Obama's trying to expand Medicaid and make sure that they don't get screened for pre-existing condition. And with watered a tree of liberty. I mean, I'm sorry to sound like some, SJW, but really, like, God, like how fucking relentlessly racist and stupid does this country have to be? I'm just like, can we at least get to the point where we're fighting subtle racism ever? There's like this group of people like, nope. Yes. Oh, I thought you were leaning in. You're calling from a 206 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Andy from Seattle.
Hey, Andy, what's going on?
So I just wanted to talk about there's a race out here in Burien, which is a suburb of Seattle. I don't know if you guys have heard about it at all.
Nope.
But there's a slate of candidates who they're trying to reverse the sanctuary status of the suburb. Mm-hmm. So they're running on a Burien Proud, Burien First kind of slate, and there's an organization called Respect Washington that has connections to white supremacy, and they sent out letters to the Burien residents doxing immigrants.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Pardon me. People that they're considering to be like, immigrant criminals. There was someone in Burien that Fox News ran calling the doc a rapist. So, yeah, it's turned into a really ugly race. Yeah. So they're being opposed by a slate of candidates that have, connections to labor and other folks, which of course are being characterized as, special interests. So anyway, this is just kind of, the world that we're living in. Yeah. And as far as fighting subtle racism, yeah, that's that's kind of off the table right now. So
well, I mean, it all has to happen
we don't have
simultaneously, but I get what you mean. You have you have the brown shirts in the White House and at the gates. Yeah.
And the slate's headed by this lady, Darla Green, who I swear to God, she resembles a villain from a John Waters film.
I believe it.
I
think the only version of this reality that makes sense is in a John Waters film.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, we don't have Lake Michigan out here, but I guess the moon fell into Lake Washington because this is all because of the kind of climate that has come about with white supremacists feeling okay to do what they're doing and to pull shit like this. So
right.
Anyway, thanks for taking my call, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right.
I'm just going to touch on the story briefly, and we'll do these other pieces of sound. A consortium of over 90 news organizations around the world unveiled the Paradise Papers, a leak of 13.4 million financial documents to throw into light the top end of offshore finance, and this is from the BBC. In a weeks-long expose of how politicians, multinationals, celebrities, and high-net-worth individuals use complex structures to protect their cash from higher taxes. As with last year's Panama Papers leaks, the documents were obtained by a German newspaper, which called on the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists to oversee the investigation. One of the biggest finds was Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross kept a financial stake in a firm whose major partners include a Russian company part owned by Vladimir Putin's son-in-law. Why Ross' revelation matters from the New York, and this is the New York Times contextualizing why that matters. While several Trump campaign and business associates have come under scrutiny, until now, no business connections have been reported between senior officials and members of Putin's family and inner circle. And this is how to talk about Russia and how to think about it. It's not a Red Dawn story. It's not a story that justifies any of the failings of neoliberal candidates. In fact, Russia is the logic of where we went with how this Russia story will play out, which is Manchurian, which is more Goodfellas which is Goodfellas, not Manchurian Candidate. That's what it is. This is what international neoliberalism does to itself. It inevitably leads to linkages of high asset individuals, double dealing, and corruption. We see this. Look at the more kind of high-end, rarefied world. Look at the story from the UK that came. It was already totally forgotten, of people getting previews of the LIBOR score. I mean, that is an unbelievable violation of supposed neutrality in international finance. That was regular criminal conduct in the City of London. We know about all of the, deregulation and combination of just things that were legal that should be illegal and outright illegal activities that Wall Street engaged in, which melted down the global economy. And when you look at the Russia story and you realize that this is just another process of corrupt governments, oligarchs, and corporations linking and expanding influence and building corrupt relationships, it makes a whole lot of sense. And a guy like Wilbur Ross, another dangerous plutocrat billionaire, is a perfect conduit to understand this story. As soon as Russia becomes a plutocracy, neoliberalism, and corruption story, then we hit all bases at once. We don't do the dum-dum thing, deny there's nothing there. We don't do the dum-dum center thing and pretend that it's all of this secret high-end conspiracy and we don't have to talk about anything else. We can simultaneously hit Trump's approval ratings, talk about a real story, and use it to elucidate an international system which is corrupt and dysfunctional to its core, and this is but one manifestation of which there are endless examples. Let's just get back to the gun thing for a moment, because we've talked about how obviously the Republican Party and the bagmen for the domestic arms industry are not going to do anything to protect people, and this is the type of utter, just demented, grotesque insanity that politicians will say as they protect these deadly, dangerous industries. This is Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton speaking on Fox News, and this is his response to this atrocity yesterday in Texas.
Jackson, as a father, can you wrap your brain around what we're learning today, that children were killed children were shot. The 14-year-old daughter of the pastor was killed in this type of attack. I mean, as a country, what do we do? How can we get our arms around this and stop this insanity, stop this carnage that is continuing time and time and time again with these type of multiple shootings that end with either the suspect dead or the suspect, proclaiming some twisted cause?
You know what? It breaks my heart. Obviously, I have 4 children of my own. As soon as I heard that children were involved, it's obviously horrific that anybody was shot, innocent people. But there's just something about children dying that just devastates all of us. So obviously, it breaks my heart. As far as what we can do in the future, I mean, the only thing I know, because you can't necessarily keep guns out of the hand of people who are going to violate the law. If somebody's willing to kill someone, they're also going to be willing to violate a gun law. And all I can say is that, in Texas, at least we have the opportunity to have concealed carry. And so if it's a place where somebody has the ability to carry, there's always the opportunity that gunman will be taken out before he has the opportunity to kill very many people.
And you would think, the concept of a firearm and a church, that we've come to that. I mean, in Arkansas, there's the Church Protection Act, where they're legally allowed to do that, apparently. It just are two potentially diametric opposite concepts when you're there praying to the Lord.
Well, there's no doubt. And I think that's why so many people don't carry in a church, whereas if this had been somewhere else, you might have seen somebody being able to react. But I think as we see, we've had shootings at churches for forever. This is going to happen again. And so, we need people in churches, either, professional security or at least arming some of the parishioners or the congregation so that they can respond if something like this, when something like this happens again.
I don't even know where to begin with that, but we should just not have laws because people will break them. That's obviously a great upshot. I'm sure that this guy is a rabid, some type of, weird libertarian kid who calls into this show, and he's probably want to get rid of shoplifting laws as an example, right? Because people will shoplift. So why have those laws? It will happen. That's basically just how demented and insane and cynical you have to be to carry water for this industry and not do anything about it. That's the bottom line. And I don't want to hear about your daughters. You're working every day, and you're working in that TV hit to make sure that this type of thing is possible. So it's disgusting.
When a Fox News anchor sounds enlightened on any particular topic,
right,
that's a good bellwether for where we're at right now.
I just want to do one more minute on this Virginia campaign, because I really do want to underline that if you live in Virginia and you're at all on the fence, and I get it, Ralph Northam's the sanctuary's comment was disgusting, but listen to how this will play out if Ed Gillespie, who has completely embraced, in addition to should have been voted against to begin with, but has completely adopted the xenophobic Trump agenda, and that will be amplified across the country in 2018. Listen to this quote from Stephen Bannon. This is what you need to know. This is Steve Bannon talking about Ed Gillespie. He's closed the enthusiasm gap by rallying around the Trump agenda. Bannon, the president's former strategist, said, "I think the big lesson for Thursday is that in Gillespie's case, Trumpism without Trump can show the way forward. If that's the case, Democrats better be very, very worried." Well, yes, Democrats need to be worried because there's things that need to be done to reform and move the party forward. But everybody should be worried if electoral racism continues to be rewarded. And you have, as a voter, a moral, civic, and strategic obligation to block that at every turn. In the same way that Emmanuel Macron is horrible and must be contested and must be fought. But when there was a choice between garbage neoliberal trash that ultimately needs to be defeated and the immediate need to defeat neo-fascism, you vote for Macron. That's the same reason you vote for Hillary, and it's the same reason that absolutely tomorrow you must vote for Ralph Northam to defeat Ed Gillespie. It has very, very significant implications for the rest of the country, and it's an absolute necessity and not a time for fantasy, indulgence, or false equivalency.
Yeah, you got to take the French example. You vote for Macron, and then you hate him immediately.
And then you hate him, and then you protest him, and then you make his life a living hell. But there's no win in fascism. There's no secret reverberative benefit. If Hillary Clinton was president right now, all of us would be giving her hell, and we'd be having an internal battle between the left and neoliberal garbage, and the far right would be temporarily neutralized. And if you don't think that that's a better ground to play on, I'm sorry, you simply don't understand history or politics. And it is indulgent, because the implications of these policies are absolutely, as always, are going to hit the most vulnerable the most harshly. Bless you. You're calling from a 651 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hi.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Not too well.
Hello?
Oh, now I can. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I will try to. Can you hear me a bit better now?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, hi. Sorry.
No problem.
This is Mariana from Minnesota.
Hi, Mariana.
Hey, I was just gonna quick call in, I guess, with another interesting election going on tomorrow that I think people should know about. So in Minneapolis tomorrow, there's like small elections, and one of the people running for a city council seat is Ginger Jensen, who is a socialist. She's running with Socialist Alternative.
Oh, great.
And she's actually been endorsed by the DSA too, which is pretty important because a lot of times the DSA and Socialist Alternative have had conflicts with who to endorse. But so there's a lot of like strength behind her, and it's a pretty safe seat. I think it's 3 Democrats running and then the Socialists. So
great. So Ginger Jensen, we have it up on it's City Council, Minneapolis City Council Ward 3, Ginger Jensen. Definitely, if you're there, if you're in that ward and you're listening, go vote for Ginger.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say one more thing.
Sure.
It's also like kind of important because a big topic right now, an issue in Minneapolis is rent control.
Yep.
There's like some of the biggest housing of a major city, if not the most. And so she's working on that, and she was the former leader of 15 Now before Minneapolis actually won that fight. So looks like she's doing a lot of great activism. There's been results. So like,
that's great.
If you're out there, I'm just going to say, take the extra few minutes to go. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
Definitely. Thank you so much for the call. Absolutely. Thank you, Mariana.
Thanks.
All right, you're calling
Bye.
from a 412 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Michael. It's Sean from Iowa. How you doing?
Hey, Sean. What's going on, man? What's on your mind?
Not much. I wanted to share a couple things that are going on with healthcare in Iowa.
Okay.
I sent you guys an email to Majority Reporters if you wanted links, but
Okay.
if anybody wants information on how it would play out for privatization of Medicaid, the lieutenant governor, now that Branstad is in China, became governor and have implemented a privatized version of Medicaid. And they have overshot their cost goals, had to go back to the state for more money, while also decreasing the amount of care they're giving. So they're shafting the people of Iowa, while not saving a whole lot of money.
Right.
And so if anybody wants to see that, you can have a case study to discuss that in 2018 for why this is important. And then, two, a lot of people have been sniping back and forth over whether we can argue within the left or the Democratic Party. If you don't argue with your own peers or people who share your ideology, you get Fox News, you get Gorka, you get Bannon, and you get Trump. That's what happens when you don't share or you don't discuss openly differences of opinion. You just get this cacophony of noise that gets you this racist party where no one can say shit about anybody else for fear of the wrath of the rest of the group.
And also, let me just add to that really briefly too. I think especially if you're carving out the kind of position that this show carves out, where, like, you know, you're not going in on a dumb position and you're trying to create a lot of subtlety and distinctions so that there's a long-term strategy and addressing short-term crises and working different things simultaneously. the notion that, I mean, first of all, for smart audiences, they're going to need balanced and honest messages. If I came out and I said, hey, Ralph Northam is great, bullshit. Everybody knows what he is. The important point is that Ed Gillespie is defeated. Second point is that it's obviously not, whether we like it or not, this notion is not a durable strategy into the future. I mean, there is going to have to be a turn at some point where you actually are saying, hey, aren't you excited for who you're voting for on Tuesday? Even if you don't think they're perfect. That whole purity test thing is also, it's very overstated. I don't think any candidate is perfect, but there are some that I like, and there needs to be more that people like. And, and number three, it's just, these issues need to be worked out. And anybody on either side of that equation, either the Reed side or the Door side, that says that, the left can't make a critique, the left can't push the party and the country to address actual problems because, of Trump or some Twitter controversy or whatever the dum-dum center is hustling, that is disingenuous and harmful to movement building. And anytime, on the dum-dum left side, I read something about the DNC somewhere or some staffer was rude, so therefore I'm not going to vote. Get over yourselves. We got to do all things at once and be smart about it and be a little bit mature and calm about it.
If you can't have a constant critique of your position, you don't belong in the conversation.
Right.
So, anyway, I appreciate it. Have a good rest of the week, eh?
Thanks, boss.
Yeah, I agree. I generally have a higher tolerance for conflict like this too, and I also think it's interesting to hear, and I understand why people are saying it because of the elections, but I think people are too sensitive about the timing and where focus is placed. And I'm sick of the same sort of people saying this isn't the time for this argument, right? Like, because it's from people who it's when is the time? The closest time that we've had to a time for this argument is when Hillary had her book, which was as divisive as, well, maybe not as
Hillary's book was profoundly divisive.
Exactly. Is in the same genre of divisiveness as Donna's is. And even then, we weren't having the argument.
And Hillary Clinton's a much more important person than Donna.
Well, but what I'm saying is, so that's when we were supposed to have this argument. Right. But even then, it was about Hillary's right to do the book, not actually what she was arguing in the first
It's always
place.
a shifting of the ball. Hillary Clinton has a right to literally do whatever she wants that doesn't involve harming another person. Okay? Or whatever, drunk driving. Was her book constructive and helpful for the project that these people claim they want? It's just so demonstrably false. And the fact, Bernie put out a book last year, and it was, of course, a self-serving political memoir, as every political memoir from de Gaulle to the most mediocre hack in Congress should be. Okay? And it was also an interesting book because Bernie's an interesting guy with good politics. But Bernie didn't, Bernie had some soft criticisms of Clinton from a policy perspective. So, there's hypocrisy, which everybody's going to engage in to a degree, but you should be aware of your hypocrisies before you go out all guns blazing, no matter what side you're on. And number two, there's good arguments and bad arguments. A bad argument, the polls were secretly rigged for Hillary is a bad argument. There's no evidence for it, and it's a conspiracy theory, so that should be dismissed at any time. The DNC is dysfunctional, has a incestuous relationship with failed consultants, and preferred Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders, and has a culture of, sort of complacency and failure and corporatism that reflect broader overall failures of the Democratic Party in the modern era. Who is going to, with any seriousness, debate that? And then at the flip side, if you say, oh, well, Tom Perez is head of the DNC, so I'm going to let fucking xenophobe, lobbyist become governor of Virginia, well, you're an idiot. Hashtag all at once. I don't know what else to say. You're calling from a 508 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? 508. I think that's the same one, yeah. You're calling from a 631 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael, it's Tim from New Paltz. How you guys doing?
Hey, Tim, what's going on, man?
Nothing much. I just had a quick, I listened to back episodes, a little behind, and I was listening to you guys dunking on George Papadopoulos, and I had to weigh in as a Greek American. George Papadopoulos is a very special kind of fail son that exists in the Greek community, and we all know a person just like him.
Papadopoulos.
It's fucking amazing. George Papadopoulos is a good kid, but I don't know him.
Yeah. It's a good kid.
But
Does a
he's
lot
like
of
a certain
things.
kind of guy, like late 20s, slicked hair, always carrying an empty briefcase. He's taken like 2 business classes at Hofstra, and everyone knows for sure that he's going to wind up in his dad's diner in Long Island City within 5 years. Like,
2
it's just
business
a fact.
classes at Hofstra.
Yeah, like, I know this guy. We all know this fucking guy, and he's going to wind up being like a regional manager at his dad's diner. It's just
My
a fact.
business
And-
is business.
My business is being good at diner business. But there's
Right.
also,
And this is
Michael, you
exactly
gotta
the
work on
type
that
of
Greek
fail,
accent.
fail son that would think Trump is cool, right?
Yeah. It's
And by
exactly
the
kind
way,
of loser who
running a
would be
diner is a
amazed.
perfectly honorable thing to do and very hard work. That's not the diss here.
Yo, my grandparents own a diner. It is, the stereotype is real. We all own one. I have like 4. No, but it's just these guys think they're going to be Wall Street sharks. You know, this is like the delusion that they have. They're going to be Wall Street sharks.
Right.
They're going to be magnates of in some huge way, and you know they remain bitter about it and annoying forever. That it never happens, but they're just kind of mediocre. Like it's no one's fault. And
I think I'm going to have to say
I don't know.
I call a lot of people mediocre, and my definition of mediocre like expands from like, you know, like Hillary Clinton to I can't even think of like, you know, to name some empty suit on TV. But that's an expansive definition because obviously like someone like Hillary Clinton is very, very smart. But I'm going to have to say, Papadopoulos, if you are literally like your lie on your resume is model UN, I'm going to have to say below mediocre.
Yeah, that's
He's
just
pre-mediocre.
sad.
Pre-mediocre.
But there's a really great argument to be made about, you know, I'm kind of bummed actually that we don't live in a time where the only Greek anyone knows about in America is John Stamos, because now we have this fucker and Milo Yiannopoulos carrying the torch of the Hellenistic people, and it's not good.
Not good. It's not a good look for the Greeks. Nope. And by the way, you
Michael, the
read
Greek
Socrates
accent
in
is very
college.
easy.
He was kind of an asshole. He sort of reads like
You
a
know, the
moody
Greeks are
pedophile. He kind of reads like
The Greeks
Kevin
are just-
Spacey with more pretension and less charm. Not good.
The Greeks are just the Africans of Europe. You know, it's sad.
The Puerto Ricans of Europe. Everyone says it. And George Papadopoulos. I didn't even know that. I guess it makes sense that Yiannopoulos is Greek. I didn't even know that. Yabba-dabba-doppoulos.
He's actually not Greek. His grandma, I think, had a Greek surname.
You know what,
He
dude?
changed
I
his
don't care. I
last
don't want to
name.
give Milo any more coverage. I don't care.
It
where
doesn't
he's
matter,
from.
but
yeah,
look up a
hopefully
Greek
he'll
accent.
die
They're
penniless
very
somewhere.
easy.
What?
Very easy. Look up a Greek accent. They're very easy. If my grandpa was talking about George Papadopoulos, it'd be like, you know, Yoriki, he's a good guy. He goes to jail 6-7 years. It's all right. But listen, when he come out of jail, he's good Greek boy. You marry him, okay? He's good Greek boy. I know his parents. Dinah, best on Long Island City, okay? It's good Greek. It's not hard.
Thanks for the call, brother.
No problem. Later.
Bye.
I think we need to start thinking about Papadopoulos as like the a failed Telemachus type. We need to make like an Odyssey entire show of him going to Russia.
The Russia story as the Odyssey.
Yes.
Like why are you here again, George? Go back to your father's diner. There's some like kindly Russian gangster that gets concerned about him. Like he's going to be killed. We must return him to Long Island City so he can forge more on resume. Let's do this final piece of sound. Remember a couple of weeks ago where it looked like Alex Jones's sort of sad and tired and low energy British co-host was kind of getting fed up. Well, he looks like he's back in the fold here. Paul Joseph Watson. And there's a good reason he's back in the fold, and that's not just because he's wearing one of Alex Jones's suits. It's because of a product that, frankly, we all should be checking out.
Now without lead.
Now without lead.
Before I start writing or shooting a video, I take 2 capsules of Brain Force for a sustainable burst of energy. This is, without question, the most powerful nootropic I've ever taken, and it comes without any of the crashes or the jitters associated with energy drinks. It's additive-free, nothing artificial. It's Brain Force Plus. Read thousands of 5-star independent reviews right now and get your Brain Force Plus at InfoWarsLife.com.
So good sell. Paul's getting back to the core business, which is, of course, freaking out rubes and then selling them nonsense with lead in it and other various things. I think it was lead that they measured in the BuzzFeed article, right? My guess is, and this is just purely my speculation and opinion, but I think that Paul probably was shopping his resume around. No one bit. And he had to get back to the headquarters and do a fucking
You're back on commercial duty.
Yeah, you're back on commercial duty. Now do a proper fucking read or you're out the door. That accent only gets you so far. I think my kids got taken away from me. You think I care? I'm a fucking animal. I'm a machine.
You know, I would... It makes me wish, like, heaven was real. Because if heaven was real, the first request I'd make of God is, like, hey, can I go back to Earth and follow everyone around who's taking these Brain Force Plus supplements and just see what their day is like after they, and like just what there's sort of social surroundings. I just want to know.
See,
like,
it's so
what
funny
kind of person
because I'm not even like, I actually, you know, I of all people here are probably the most pro woo, right? So I totally think that eating well is a good idea. I know that mainstream doctors will recommend you take like a vitamin supplement if it's properly sourced or whatever. But those products, like what's so funny about them is the best case scenario is that they're doing nothing. Like the best case scenario is that the product is completely fake and there's nothing in it. And it could be just as likely that you're like taking like some type of like bull tranquilizer that will fucking kill you.
I've probably had the best case scenario with nootropics, as he termed them. Back in college, I ordered some stuff from India. I can't remember what it was called, but I mean it was like mild. It was like a mild amphetamine or something like that, but you could barely tell.
I could see you being super focused on those. Matt was just like, I'm going to.
I don't recommend it because I think even then the majority of it is placebo effect.
Well, you're all a bunch of fucking pussies. It's really quickly. Doug Sosnick, he's a former political strategist and advisor from Bill Clinton from 1994 to 2000. He wrote this piece on October 6th in the Washington Post. Trump is on track to win re-election. More than half of Americans don't think Trump is fit to serve as president, yet he has a clear path to winning re-election. If Trump isn't removed from office and doesn't lead the country to some form of global catastrophe, he could serve a second term simply by maintaining his current level of support with his base. And Sosnick goes on to explain what has changed are that the political fault lines that have driven debate since the early 1980s until now, the ideological divide between the parties are largely differences around social issues, defense spending, and trade, as well as tax cuts for the wealthy of corporations. Well, those are not social issues. Today, the central issue has become populism, as voters have moved away from the two parties and increasingly self-identify as independent. And the point that he makes is that, as an example, if Democrats elect, the thing that I want to focus on, and it's very premature to talk about 2020. But in Maine, Lepage, who is another precursor along with Arpaio for the type of incredibly distinctly dangerous politics that we have in the Trump era. I mean, Lepage could not be, he's unhinged, bigoted, far extreme authoritarian right. He won a race in Maine, which is a purplish to actually quasi-blue state. He won his first race because there was an independent spoiler candidate. And by the way, this was not a left candidate. This was a centrist third way way type of candidate. The same thing happened again when he ran for re-election. So there was another centrist third way-ish independent who ran, split the vote against him, and he got reelected. And he's still governor of Maine, in spite of many scandals, extremist politics, and an incredibly destructive record. So Sosnick is right. There is a path on just pure base mobilization that could see Trump win a second term. But I think this is relevant for these debates inside the Democratic Party, because the reality is that it is a certainty, a 99% certainty, that if Bernie Sanders runs again, he's going to run in the Democratic primary. And what we've already seen with the way he dealt with Hillary Clinton and the last general, that for whatever other grievances and blah, 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 and all of the genuine policy disagreements, he and a vast majority of his coalition, and a vast majority of people on the real left, care profoundly about Trump not being president. And if you even go and look at Congress, I mean, it was the Progressive Caucus and the left that always compromises, as an example, on Obamacare, because they actually care about people's well-being. Whereas Democratic scavengers and sociopaths like Joe Lieberman and Ben Nelson and, you know, the Republican hacks that went along like Olympia Snowe and Susan Collins, they, you know, extracted things to make the healthcare bill less good for people and better for corporations because they don't care about people. The Progressive Caucus, at a time during the healthcare debate, promised to sink it if there wasn't a public option. We all know how much better it would be, a radically better law, and radically even more popular than it already is with a public option. They step back from it because ultimately they care about people, so they're not going to stand in the way of a Medicaid expansion and protecting people with pre-existing conditions and consumer rights. So my point being is that in 2020, if there is a clean primary, and if a candidate who, by the way, and this is where the left needs to be real, will already be significantly to the left, any of them, than where Obama was in 08 or 12 or where Clinton was in 16. Any of them. Kamala Harris, Kristen Gillibrand, all of them will be running progressive campaigns. Cory Booker. If that happens, yes, there will be some freak out. Yes, there will be some Green Party, whatever. But at the end of the day, the vast majority of actual left voters will coalesce around the nominee because they're going to be more committed than anybody to defeating Donald Trump. If the Democrats elect an actual progressive, an actual left candidate, a Bernie Sanders candidate with a for real agenda that is structural in terms of dealing with inequality, in terms of dealing with structural racism and all the rest, I guarantee you that a Mike Bloomberg type will run for president. And they will do very poorly because that type of elitist politics has very little appeal for any part of the country. But they'll have an unbelievable amount of money and media attention. So instead of all of this nonsense about who isn't and isn't a Democrat and all this whatever, start thinking about who are the people now that would actually potentially split from the party to support that type of candidacy. Because I can guarantee you, for one, I will vote for the Democratic candidate in 2020. Period. I don't know if a lot of these hashtag resistance types, I think a lot of them would, but I think some of them wouldn't. And I think that a certain type of plutocrat who doesn't like people being rude and their media enablers, cards will be on the table if we elect an actual progressive, we nominate an actual progressive, and then all of a sudden not having their couch change taxed might become a much bigger deal than defeating Donald Trump. So let's remember that. And let's remember the lesson from Maine. It was not the left that got LePage back in office. It was an indulgent, technocratic, centrist campaign. All right. Final phone call of the day. You're calling from a 925 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name is Armand. I'm from the Bay Area, but I'm actually calling from D.C. today.
Hey, what's going on, man?
I was calling because, you guys were kind of talking about going with the Democratic candidate no matter what, and I totally agree. Against someone like Trump, obviously, and I totally agree. I don't understand though this conflict that's going on between like the Jimmy Dore's of the world, obviously, and the Sam Cedars. Like Jimmy Dore has this idea in his
They're
head
both
where
moody
we can
baby
only
boomers.
support.
That's what's going on. Or excuse me, moody. Jimmy's a moody baby boomer. Sam's a moody Gen Xer. Excuse me.
See, like he thinks you can only support like a third-party candidate, and that's like all there is to it. Now, I agree. After having come to DC and like living here now and working here, there are so many structural issues that keep like intelligent people out of the political process, or anyone who doesn't come from a wealthy or rich background out, that you end up with all of these unbelievably mediocre people at every level of this process, from congressional staffers to actually people working on the campaign. I mean, even just the intake system, like how they take in talent and making you kind of go through this whole like being a staff assistant first before you ever can become any kind of rich policy thing. You end up with a bunch of people who are good at stapling, right?
Good at stapling, come from rich families. It's the same, it's the same carried privilege that you see in all the rest of society.
Expensive city in America with a $30,000 a year salary, or with none, being an intern for 8 months.
No, it's only the ultra privileged that can do
these are mediocre people, right? So expecting a hero to emerge amongst these people to come and save us, I mean, you have to just be nuts. Right. Like ultimately, the structure is only allowing mediocre or dumb people to come through. You're not.
I don't even think it's about people's personal intelligence.
The structure's changed.
Yeah, I hear you. No, I agree with
that.
So
you're not going to get it. So while yes, I want to support the Democrats because I want the Democrats to win ultimately because I'm trying to keep fascism at bay in the long run. But that doesn't change the fact that I can support a Jabari, I can support somebody in a DSA ticket or a green ticket at the ground level because we do need to build the ground level.
I agree, and Sam would agree.
Why can't it be in the middle?
Well, I agree with you 100%.
Well, yeah,
Sam would agree.
I know Sam would agree. I'm saying like Jimmy Dore, why he's so rigid on this, like don't support realistic options to keep fascism at bay while you support people at the ground level.
I can't speak for Jimmy Dore, man. I kind of find still the whole battle kind of sad. I always enjoyed doing stuff with Jimmy, but I think that he has a highly specific audience. They're used to hearing the same thing again.
A lot of right-wingers in his audience.
And also, an audience that they just want to hear the same message over and over and over again. And, and they get it. They hate MSNBC, they hate the DNC, they hate Hillary. Okay, I get it. I don't particularly care for those things either, but there's a much, 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 much bigger world out there. And the other thing that I don't understand too is that if the type of, and I'm not going to pretend that I know how this looks, but the type of radical push that you're talking about that uproots the systems of oppression and mediocrity and everything else you're talking about are going to absolutely transcend electoral politics. And it's going to involve movement building, and it's going to involve mass protests. It's going to involve mass opt-outs. It's going to involve cooperative economies. It's going to involve, I think, even on some small level, things like, hopefully we're doing on some level in terms of a genuine, smart, and genuine alternative media. But on the electoral level, yes, you take the openings where you can find them, whether it's Bernie or Jabari, of people who are really pushing the ball forward. And then the rest of the time you go out and you expend a little bit of effort to make sure that a truly horrific option does not come into place. And it's so not complicated and so obvious and such a test of basic deductive reasoning that I don't know what to say about it, man. It just is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think definitely could connect the electoral to the social movement thing, which I don't really see. I would love for you to point if you already know somebody doing this, but like we really need to put these specific rich people in the public eye for the shit that they're doing. So when a bunch of people in Las Vegas get killed, rather than talking about the NRA, which can only be what it is for structural reasons, it literally can't be anything else.
Right.
Why not point out the fucking rich douchebag who's keeping these people afloat and the
That's
rich
what
people
Sam was making this point a couple weeks ago.
This asshole is why these people died.
I agree.
I think that's starting.
I think that is starting.
And I think a good example of that is the opioid epidemic in the Sackler family, who created OxyContin. There's a good one in the New Yorker and in Esquire if you want to read those.
And let's just use this moment to mention Joe Ricketts, who the Cubs owner, who bought DNA Info and Gothamist, and a week after they voted to unionize, shut him down.
Right.
Capital strike is what they call it.
Yeah. So these are the dangerous, disgusting plutocrats that have destroyed and bankrupted and undermined our country.
And you're right. We do need to make them start feeling afraid.
I agree. Obviously not physically, but politically,
but for their fortune,
and their
like
social, their
gone.
fortune needs to go. This needs to be the moment in history where these people look back on this and they go, if we just didn't need to steal the last 1% that was left. We already have stolen and benefited so much. We already were running a complete transferred inherited wealth system based off of replication from rentier properties and double deal and self-dealing, essentially. And if we just could have let the masses have some crumbs, maybe they wouldn't come back at us and tax back
and hang us in the
70 well, I did not say that. I was being a little bit more soft than you. Tax 90% of their wealth and distribute it to something that would be of benefit and value to society. No one needs to be that rich at all, and there needs to be a wealth cap, and there needs to be it's not wealth redistribution, wealth reclaiming, because this stuff has just been funneled and sucked up through corruption and legislative capture and corporate oligarchy. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for giving me the time, guys. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm a subscriber to TMPS and majority of.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks very much. You guys have a good one.
Thank you so much. Have a great one. Bye-bye. All right, everybody, we're going to race through some IMs. Phony shrimp. We need to stop asking for gun control. This is our government. We need to start telling them that we will have gun control or we will vote their asses out of Congress. Enough is enough. Hell, enough was enough after the Aurora shooting, but better fucking late than never. Joseph Ballin. Never forget that Democrats didn't do anything about guns from 2009 to 2010 outside of making it easier to bring a gun into federal parks. Make sure we get to vote tomorrow to make Green Party Seth Carper Dale the New Jersey governor. I don't know about all that. I mean, that's not going to happen. So I would be voting for Phil Murphy in New Jersey. But I would look at all your local races where you could vote Green or DSA. Also vote for Ralph Northam, I guess, in Virginia. Maybe if you feel like it, because I don't see a Green candidate on the ballot. Definitely vote for Ralph Northam in Virginia. That's extremely important. Hashtag Green New Deal. Hungry PPOs. I don't understand. Sam used the word money laundering and the DNC is corrupt organization on Thursday. That shit got me apoplectic. You all definitely didn't say that. It is rhetorical and semantic, but it matters, especially with actual money laundering and incomprehensible levels of corruption we are seeing with Wisconsin, the GOP, and the right rich in general. Elizabeth Warren can't be criticized at all. You're absolutely right on that. People complaining about Warren hurts us, though. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think the money laundering stuff, I think Trump is very explicitly trying to smear those boundaries because that might be something that ends up on his rap sheet.
Yeah, right. They're probably. I mean, obviously, I would be shocked if the Trump org and the Trump, which I call the Trump administration, is not rife.
I've never laundered a single dollar.
Right.
Not a single dollar.
Never put a dollar in the laundry. I mean, it's crazy.
Why would you get all that?
Doesn't make any sense. Scrumpy style. Environmental justice changed when activists figured out they can make more money from bourgeoisie liberals by threatening their property values and their messaging. NIMBYs who don't care if it's someone else's backyard as long as their quality is safe. Seth Abramson has a good thread yesterday about Papadopoulos' ties to the Greek defense minister and Putin. Left is preferable. Do you think that Rand just forgot the safe words? New character, masochist Rand, craving a spanking from the invisible hand of the government.
What would be a libertarian safe word? I feel like that's a good topic.
Markets! Crack my ribs. That's not in the Constitution. Mike Flynn Jr.'s Twitter's account has been suspended. Dad! Can't get on Twitter anymore.
He blocked me a long time ago.
Blocked me because he was using audiobooks. Fucking gay.
It got to the point where I would just say, like, your dumb dad committed treason. Like, I just try to get the first result.
You're the treasonist. You're the treasonist. The video of the white guy in terror because he's walking through a Latino neighborhood is so illustrative of the world in which this new generation of white supremacists lives. Exactly. That captures everything. Exactly. I don't know if I can read all of this, but Ernie sandwiches. Jim Johnson and Wisniewski split the progressive vote in New Jersey. I prefer Johnson for his push for government transparency and electoral reforms. It's too bad we still don't have a FPTP because One of those candidates might have won if we did. Of course, I'm going to vote for Murphy, but I'm wary of his Goldman Sachs background. Yeah, of course. And then New Jersey's had a few Goldman Sachs governors, and all of them in one-term disaster. Yep. That's right. The ideological difference the Democratic Party has with progressives are partially the reason why they are incompetent. Joy Reid comes up with pretty much only when callers or IMers bring her up. Exactly. I don't know what you're talking about. That was silly.
I mean, she does rub people the wrong way. I think
she rubs people the wrong, and
she's dumb on Twitter a lot.
Yeah, she says a lot of stupid shit on Twitter, and that's where most of the stuff comes from. There's a lane of people like Joy Reid and Jonathan Chait that when they're writing or talking about Republicans, they do a very good job. And I tweeted Joy Reid something she did on the Uranium One nonsense last week. When they're talking about progressives, when they're talking about the left, when they're talking about inequality, when they're talking about Bernie Sanders, when they're talking about structure, they're terrible. They suck. And she adds a lot of flair to her suckiness, including, tweeting out Ronald Reagan as an example of someone who condemned racism well. I didn't even say anything about it at the time, but that's the type of example of something that is so historically illiterate that it frustrates people. I've criticized her a few times on my show, but that's actually because I had a guest who is a young, leftist woman of color writer, and she said, yeah, I think it's pretty annoying that Joy Reid constantly tries to invalidate my perspective by pretending that black people's views on politics are monolithic third-way wokeism. And that's actually a valid topic of conversation. But on this show, I mean, she's come out maybe not even a handful of times, 2 or 3 times on my show, mostly in the post game. And on this show, I said a 10th of Dore. I think she's more like a 20th of Dore. I mean, it's not even remotely comparable.
She comes up when people are like, why don't you bash her like you bash Jimmy Dore?
Yes. And then Sam explains it, and then he gets mad about Jimmy Dore, and then we have another Jimmy Dore video. What are you talking about? So I know I was a little angry at that guy before, but it's just like, it wasn't even that we were disagreeing, but it's just like when you say something that's just demonstrably false, at least about our show, I can't speak about other people. And then I say, okay, well, sure, people have weird fixations on media figures, and I understand that Joy Reid is a woman of color, so it's different. I get that. We can index that. But, and then I go, okay, well, what about Jimmy Dore? And he goes, well, Jimmy Dore's a douche. Okay, well, a lot of people think that Joy Reid is a douche. Like, what do you, just okay, like, come on, man, just be coherent. Not to be too impatient or anything. I can't. Fittingly, the assaulter Rand Paul is forcing Rand Paul to use his government-subsidized healthcare and government-subsidized police and government-subsidized courts. Yeah, exactly. Cuckapalooza, please read this in the right-wing Mandela voice. Of course, Michael would support Jabari Bridgeport's quote-unquote race. We get it. Always with the rap and reggae interludes, 2 dope boys, and a podcast, Michael's guest list, etc. The YouTube feed only shows the top half, but I'm guessing Michael has a badonkadonk. Oh, that was weak. That was a little weak. Letter carrier. Having a lunch yesterday with the People's Republic of Cambridge yesterday when I overheard a gentleman discussing the politics of zeal with the zeal of Mindy. As I left the bar, I explained to him that he may enjoy listening to MR already. It was already a subscriber. Game recognized game. Respect. Staten Island Mike. I can't think of a clever way to say this, but I'm just... Cliff is boring. Okay. Christo, I hope John from San Antonio was near the mass shooting yesterday. Jeez, I don't think so, but Jesus Christ. It's fucking horrible. New character, Donnie Brasco, Jared Kushner. I suggest we stop using terms of plutocrat and oligarch and refer to them as neo-feudal sadists that they are. Also, recently I faded my way back to Bad Religion. Their album Recipe for Hate was woke as fuck 27 years ago.
Use whatever works as far as labeling billionaires.
Yeah, whatever works. Trotsky would have won. You forgot to mention Ginger Jensen. No, Mariana called in with the correction. Ginger Jensen, the 3rd Ward. Kolodek, Mike in Minneapolis, great socialist candidate. Kolodek, Michael, I sent you guys a video that's very relevant to these shootings. Also, I tweeted it to Matt, Leck, and Sam half an hour ago. I'm certain you'll find a way to play it on the fun half. Maybe not today, but soon. We'll be on the lookout for it for sure. I don't have it. You'll get to play it tomorrow. I'm sorry, could you IM that in again? Because I just don't know the answer to this question. And it is off topic, but the reason I don't want to answer is I don't have a good answer for it. Garnett, Intercept has a good article on 4 misleading statements reporters have been propagating about the John of Brazil stuff. Also, you should have Nomiki Konst on to talk about the DNC Unity Commission.
We tried to get her on recently. We should do that.
Yeah. Anthony from Baltimore, we should talk about taxing tuition waivers. We should also talk about increasing stipend amounts from graduate students in the same sentence. Failing to do that neglects the fact that tuition waivers are a product of a neoliberal higher education system and pricing structure that resembles a discount mattress retailer, right? High sticker price, high discount rate, but via means testing. And taxing tuition waivers as income does nothing to address the larger systemic issues of our unpunished higher education system. I would seriously be screwed if I had to pay taxes on tuition waivers as someone scraping by paying check with very limited excessive cash to save for emergencies. Absolutely. Worcester Polychronopolis. Hey, Michael, what happened to the other show? 2 dipshits and a podcast, huh? By the way, your man Anthony Weeder just checked into prison. That is weird. Very weird. I am. Jay Tingle, suggestion from a listener, Les Malik. Okay. In the sticks. So what do they have to do with piss off your neighbor that they show up and beat you? I mean, I hate my neighbor baying bloodhound and their constant use of air compressor every time I decide to sit outside, but I've never gone over and attacked him. What did Rand Paul do? Thoughts? Also, the guy is already out on bail for being a U.S. senator. I don't want to
take the non-aggression principle very seriously.
I take non-aggression principle very seriously. Maybe Rand Paul just stood at technically his side of the lawn and just read Ayn Rand to the guy. The guy just lost his fucking mind. Fart face in Ayn Rand voice. Sir, you're encroaching on my personal private property. Now you're definitely violating the non-aggression principle. I'm not going to return this act of aggression, sir. That's exactly what you want. I'm just going to do a turtle here on the ground. Or wow, now you're kicking me in the ribs. This is not okay. I'll be not made a slave to your flawed expression of individual responsibility. Really do write themselves, these guys, don't they? Lewis from Texas. The whole thing is crazy. And the final, I apologize that I'm not getting to everybody's IMs. The final IM of the day. To echo your, James Darwin, to echo your call earlier, I grew up in a town with a fairly big Greek population. I used to buy weed from George Papadopoulos. And this was the name of the dictator when Greece was under martial law from 1967 to 1974. Hashtag the more you know. We're back live tomorrow with Sam, 7 p.m. for TMBS, all tomorrow and Tuesday. Thanks, everybody.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth